Oh, Stevie Watkins.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the Littleton Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, April 8th, 2019. I will first mention that we are entering into or intending to enter into an executive session for purposes of discussing non-union contact strategy, after which time we will convene an open session. We're scheduled to do that at 6:30 PM, although we perhaps might be earlier than that. At that time, I will read through the remainder of the agenda, and we will commence the meeting, the remainder of the meeting then. But at this point, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, subsection 21, Section A, Clause 2, to convene an executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel and to reconvene in an open session thereafter.
Okay, and this requires, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, the motion's made by Selectman Knox and seconded by Selectman Napoli. This requires a roll call vote. Selectman Napoli?
Aye.
Selectman Gerbig's not, he may not be joining us tonight, he may be late in any event. Selectman DeCoste?
Aye.
Selectman Knox?
Aye.
And Selectman Galavy, aye. So we will return to open session just as soon as we're done conducting our executive session business. Thank you.
Kirby did.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get the override
What do you think gets him through his night?
Good evening. Here's the first, we're ahead of schedule. All right, so, folks.
It's all's here.
It's the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
one. It won't last long.
Anyway, folks, we are just exited executive session, so our first order of business is we will deal with the motions that we just discussed in executive session, and then we'll resume our schedule as it has been posted. So, Madam Clerk, did you have a motion, or do you have a couple of motions? You want to take the first of them,
I
please?
do, certainly. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 1080, to authorize execution of a new two-year contract with Fire Chief Scott T. Wodzinski, effective November 4th, 2018, upon terms as negotiated.
Second?
Okay, the motion's been made by Selectman Napoli and seconded by Selectman Knox. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, I'll do it by a roll call. Selectman Napoli?
Aye.
Selectman Gerbig's not here. Selectman DeCoste?
Aye.
Selectman Knox?
Aye.
Selectman Glavy? Aye, unanimous. And you have another motion on a related matter?
I
Or a
do.
separate matter, excuse me.
No, I do. I just have one question.
Yes.
Appointing interim or permanent finance?
Interim, correct?
Interim is
Interim.
what we've been calling. Steve?
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize execution of memorandum of understanding appointing Steve Venuti interim finance director, grade 13, step 4, Ann Esmond to grade 11, step 8, and Michelle Reynolds to grade 9, step 8, through fiscal year 21, said changes to be effective as of March 11, 2019.
Second.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Motion's been made by Selectman Napoli. Selectman Coast has seconded. Any further discussion?
None.
Again, by roll call, Selectman Napoli.
Aye.
Selectman Gerbig's not here. Selectman Coast.
Aye.
Selectman Knox.
Aye.
And Selectman Glavy. Aye. Terrific. We're all set.
All right,
Thank you.
great, give that back.
All right, yeah, I'll do a couple of signatures here and before we lose track of the paperwork. Today is 4/8, is it? Thank you. One. Two. Two of each, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, Chief, we appreciate your patience very much, and for the audience, apologize for not making that clearer earlier, but what we were doing was renewing a contract with Chief Wodzinski to continue his fine service running our fire department. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And what we also did in the second motion was a vote to reward the over and above performance of some members of our finance team who have been dealing with challenges with down staff and increased duties, not the least of which is the implementation of the Munis software program. So Steve Venuti, Ann Esmond, and Michelle Reynolds are the three folks that we are happy to recognize their outstanding service for the town, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Got my pen?
Oh, I kind of liked it, though.
I'll get you one. Happy birthday.
Okay. With that, folks, we've organized the board, but we are not too late to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, will you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anthony, would you direct us through the mail that we have?
Yes, absolutely. So we just, one thing to report, Mr. Chairman. John Borowski, our Veterans Agent, is letting us know about the Memorial Day Parade, which will be taking place on Monday, May 27th. The parade starts at Donnellan's parking lot. He's got a full itinerary, which is up on the screen, and it's in the packet. So, again, it starts at 9 o'clock. I believe the kickoff is at 9:30, step-off, I should say. And that was it.
Okay, great. And whoever will be chair at that point, expected to have some remarks.
Remarks, yes, yeah.
Yep, and, great, all right. Move along, let's look for items that, since we're slightly ahead of schedule, maybe work from the back of the packet forward. Do you want to, board members deal with the minutes perhaps first, and then perhaps we'll go to the interim town administrator's report? Just to make sure we don't discuss any item that might be attracting some visitors. We do have minutes, yes?
Yeah, 2 sets, right?
2 sets, yep. All right. March 11th, meeting minutes, and March 25th. Board members, have you had a chance to look them over? Do you have any recommended amendments or changes?
There was one change, which is
Yeah.
that it's really sick, in referencing the retail marijuana licensing group.
Yes?
It references Anna Mayer, not Anna Houston. So if that change could be made.
And do you know where that is offhand?
It's on the 11th agenda, I believe.
Okay, they both serve the town well, but we want to get the right one in there. All right.
March 11th, Chair?
This electronic thing. I'll get there though, I promise. Actually, I apologize, it's on the 25th.
I was just going to say, I just read through the
It's on
11th.
Page 3, I think, on the
You're right, it does say Anna Mayer, and it should say Anna Houston, correct.
Okay.
it's the only thing I caught.
I'm sure Anna Mayer would have done a fine job, but she's not on that committee.
I was okay with it. And make a motion to approve the March 11th minutes as written and the March 25th as amended.
Okay. Members, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Selectman DeCoste, seconded by Selectman Knox. Any further discussion on the motion? Then all in favor of approving the minutes for March 11th as presented and March 25th as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all opposed, the ayes have it. Terrific. Anthony, are you okay moving into your report, or is there anything?
Yeah, no, it's a quick one too, Mr. Chairman. So it's basically to sign the warrant for the annual town election, which will be on May 6th, no, I'm sorry, May 11th. So if we have the board sign this, and we'll have the constable post this forthwith.
Okay, does that require a motion to Anthony or not?
There's one drafted.
There is
Yeah.
one draft,
Yeah.
thank you. Then, Madam Clerk, do you want to read the motion?
Certainly. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to execute the warrant for the annual town election to be held on Saturday, May 11th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Charles Forbes K Gymnasium, Littleton Middle School, 55 Russell Street, and to direct that the constable post said warrant forthwith.
Second.
Okay, then the motion has been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman Knox. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Okay. There's one or two here, just, this one. All right. Anthony, how about the town accountant, Steve?
Steve will,
Like a well-oiled machine today, we're just rolling through it.
These are copies of
Yeah.
job description and employment ad.
I will add, Steve, just before you get into it, that Steve and I and Nina met last week. Joe was unable to join us, but you were
Was in Connecticut, yeah.
You were in Connecticut, okay, but, so we did a little back and forth on this, but it's essentially, Steve, you want to present it as discussed?
As Paul said, there was a meeting Friday, Paul, myself, and Nina. And we again discussed whether to go with a finance director / town accountant or simply town accountant. Nina and I made the case that we should go with a finance director, town accountant at this point of time, and that's where we are right here. Paul asked to see a employment ad, which you have in front of you, as well as the job description. And Paul had some questions this afternoon, and I'm certainly
Yeah,
more than willing to.
I'll interject that. I mean, my only concern, board members, and I support the recommendation from Steve, our interim finance director, and, you know, and as the board had discussed, we wanted Nina involved in the process, even though she's not on board yet, since the position will be integrally involved with her performance. My concerns were that, not lost in the advertising is that the primary function is an accountant, although the argument has been made, you know, by Steve and Nina that they are most comfortable advertising as both finance director and town accountant. We have the option under the bylaw to deal with it differently, of just hiring an accountant and deal with the finance director later, but the compelling argument made by Steve and Nina was that they would rather find out now whether they were good candidates who could fulfill the bigger role from the start and advertise it as such. And that's the presentation right here. So I don't know, Steve, if you want to add anything to that?
No, that sums it up pretty well. The thought process, again, is always, in my point of view, what I think is going to be the best for the town. And I think by going out and getting somebody good right now as a finance director and not have to wait a year and then put a competition between a new treasurer and the town accountant, which is really going to tack more time onto the end of it. So we could be going a year or 6 months to a year after I leave to decide that, yes, this person is going to be a good town accountant, finance director, and we're right into budget season. And I just think we could use somebody knowledgeable and a good body in that accounting office who also has the ability to do a finance director's position right there.
And the facts on the ground inform this too. I mean, we know your intention is to retire
Yes.
within a year anyway, and the
2020.
chief assessor to date really hasn't expressed interest in going forward for the finance director position anyway, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, the other consideration is if we wanted to entertain the three positions, the reality is, you know, two of the three are not likely to be interested a year from now anyway.
The other position was actually the tax collector, not the
I'm sorry.
assessor.
All right, yeah. But the same
Same
lot,
thing.
yeah, same thing. Yeah.
And again, in the interim basis, I am more than willing to fill in.
Is it both the tax collector and the assessor? I thought the assessor was in the mix on that too, no?
No.
According to our
okay.
bylaws.
The-
Well,
the
I've been
assessor
saying that wrong
reports
for
into
months, and
the-
nobody's corrected me on that, or?
We've been talking
No one
about
pays
it.
attention.
All right, I knew there was a third, all right. But whoever the third is, she's not interested, right, correct, okay. Do folks understand the proposal then? It's advertising for both positions at the same time. Want you to understand that that's discretionary on the board's part, and that's the recommendation from the finance team. And, you know, as Steve explained the logic behind it, that's where it's at.
I'm glad that you guys met with Nina as well to get her input.
Yeah, she, by the way, I'd throw this in at a later point in the meeting too, but she's been meeting regularly with as many town departments as she can, and I think that's been ongoing, and it's been very helpful. You know, so
That's great.
she's digging in, yeah.
Her announcement was in the broadcaster.
Oh, okay. You get that now, do you? Oh, that broadcast, I thought you meant the senior broadcast.
That's what I thought too.
Oh, here we go. All right, no
Beacon,
turning, no
the Beacon.
turning back now.
They all look the same to me,
Right?
same font.
Oh, yeah, yeah, good. God bless you, Nina. She's watching on TV land.
I'm sure the broadcast is very happy to put the announcement out there as well.
They will, they will. I think she's meeting with Liz on Friday, so after that, perhaps.
Great.
Any questions on the job description or the advertisement as presented? I know Steve just supplied I don't think there's significant changes from this on what was provided earlier, right? It was just one change on making sure Munis was, well, it was changing the language about Munis, preferred but not required,
Preferred but not required, yes,
so strongly preferred, yes.
exactly.
So it's been graded, we know what it's graded at. It's, is that, in all likelihood, that's going to attract $100,000 to $105,000. That's going to attract some qualified candidates.
We, and we'll keep looking, and if we don't find anybody in the first round, then just keep it open. That's all.
We know we have a good, solid interim. And, yeah, it's a good time to ask the question, too. How is the help from, what is it, Sullivan and Powers?
Oh, they're outstanding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
she's here from 8:30 to 6:30 almost every day.
Wow,
so
great.
She is,
Yeah.
and she is busy the entire time.
Reminds me, we got to readdress the issue of the audit, too, at some point, which we talked about.
Right.
About a month or so ago, and that was one of the firms, it was, at least in my mind, a firm that I think we would want to consider for, and believe me, I'm very happy with Dick Hingston and Justine Hingston's work, especially in the case of a turnover in that office. It makes sense to have outside eyes coming in.
Timing's right.
Timing's right.
They couldn't be the auditor as long as we have them in here as interim.
Absolutely.
There has to
Oh,
be separation.
But it would have to be after, yeah, okay. Would that raise an issue that they had been an interim?
It's different division.
It's a different division, though. It's a different,
Same company. It's a different division within the same company.
but they don't go under Powers and Sullivan, who we're paying now, right?
Right, they're in the subsidiary, yes, CLA.
Well, we'll sort that out sooner rather than later, but.
And the final audit is done. I know Anthony wants to sit down with Dick to go through it before we send it out to the board. But it is-
Okay, and then what we end up usually doing is some meeting in May, right after the town meeting, sit down with FinCom and Selectmen and go over will the audit report be done by then? You're saying it's,
It's done now, we're just waiting.
Okay.
The draft manager.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had an opportunity that maybe you wanted to join me when we sit down with Dick, right?
yeah, and I invite another member of the board, as long as we don't create a majority, if you want to,
Just-
Selectman Knox, perhaps, yeah. Try to set something up on that,
Will
great.
do.
All right. I assume we need a vote on this, Anthony?
No, because it's an
Okay.
existing position, so
Gotcha.
no, we're fine.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are effectively back close to on schedule, so, yeah. Department updates, Anthony?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, the first one today on the agenda is our DPW Director, Chris Stoddard, where he's going to be talking about the road improvement plan.
Oh, Chris.
I got you, yep.
All right, so, what's it been, 3 years now, I think? This is the third year of this for me. So,
Time flies.
tell me about it.
Well, your first year, you were just a few months into the job, and you were,
Kind of wholesale changed it, and,
yes, you did, and with great effect, too.
yeah, I think so. Well, I got a few stats too at the end we can kind of go over too. It's neat to see. So this is our plan for this year. Obviously, we're gonna do the same basic concept. We're gonna do some mill and overlaying, some reconstruction, some microsurfacing. We're gonna try a new product this year. It's a rubber chip seal. It's basically very similar to the chip seals of yesteryear, but it's coated in rubber, and we actually sweep the existing stone away, so there's no loose stone like, I think you guys have all probably driven on roads like that for 2 or 3 months before it all settles in. We get rid of the excess so that doesn't happen. And then we're actually gonna try a new product too, is cold-in-place recycling. It's very similar to reclaiming, but it's quicker, and I've seen it in a few other communities, and it holds up really well, so we're gonna give it a whirl. So this is basically kind of the nuts and bolts of it. We have 730,000 appropriated. We have 824,000 in change left over from Chapter 90, gives us about 1.5 million. We're going to be doing a little bit more than that, about 1.57 million in work, which is going to be on approximately a little over 8.5 miles. So that's pretty good. It's consistent. The last 3 years, we've done 12.5 miles in FY18, 9.5 miles in FY19, and we've been doing about 8.5 in FY20. We have a little bit more reconstruction. You'll see a plan. That's kind of what's keeping our miles down, but I think it's going to address a lot of issues in the area that we're looking to do it in. Go ahead. So just general paving, this is going to consist of reclaiming it, grading it, and just paving it. We're going to do Gilson Road from the town line to the railroad tracks, Fort Pond Hill Road, which is pretty bad, and then another section of Hartwell Ave. So, go ahead. Rubber chip seal, this is the new product we're going to try. We're going to be doing, we're going to concentrate on Pickard Lane, Meadow Drive, and Brook Lane. We're going to do that whole neighborhood. And we're also going to try I'll call it the steepest parts of Emerson, Aspen, Birch, Cedar, and Dogwood. The thought there is that stone creates a lot of good traction, so we're going to test it on the hill to see if it improves the traction on those hills. And then Mike.
Are you doing Emerson with that, or just those roads down from Emerson?
Down from Emerson, but we are also going to do Emerson.
Oh, I see that, that's right.
Microsurfacing, we've done this now this will be the third year. I think you've driven on the roads, I mean, they're holding up fantastically well. Edsel, Rita, Brant, Beach, Pine Brook Lane, Houghton Lane, Charles, Talia, and Kimlock.
There's a J in Tashley.
Oh, there is, isn't there?
Unless it's another street we don't know about.
No, there's not, that's the one.
Talia.
So reconstruction, Mattawanakie Trail. We're gonna do phase 1 of Mattawanakie Trail, which is a little more than half of it, about almost 2/3 of it. And then the reason we're gonna do only one section and not the whole thing is there's a little bit of conservation permitting that is gonna take place in the second phase. That's gonna take a little bit more time for me to get through conservation, so we're gonna try to do the most of it we can now ahead of time, so. And then Foster Street, from number 63 Foster Street to the intersection of Tehadawon, we are going to reconstruct it, and we're actually going to install granite curb and concrete sidewalks with the intention. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to see it here, but on the left-hand side is what it looks like existing. If you know, it kind of comes to almost a Y. Everybody cuts the corner, people speed through there. It's a fairly dangerous intersection. Our plan is to actually tee that up, and by doing that, we're going to narrow that intersection by almost 30 feet. Sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it's going to be much safer. Yeah, so that green section is going to be grass. What we're going to do is we're going to extend the sidewalk all the way down around that corner, and what that's going to allow us to do is, basically, the public has said they really want us to address Foster Street. This is step 1.
Yeah, people coming off of Foster they never stop.
They don't,
So they're
yeah.
gonna be forced to now because they won't be able to make that turn at speed. We have it designed so it can take full bus traffic. I even sized it up a little bit to take
As well.
Yep. To actually take a motor coach in case for some reason it gets lost and they gotta be able to make it without.
Tour, whatever.
Yeah, so, this is the big one. This is gonna be fairly expensive. This is why we're not able to do a little bit more miles, but we're gonna do it right. Granite curbs, concrete side, we can do it all the right way, and I think it's step 1. Hopefully next year we can continue up Foster, up to Mill, with concrete sidewalks and granite curbs. So it's slowly building out the network up Foster Street. Obviously, we can't do it within the appropriation all at once, so.
And eventually meet up with the work coming in the other direction?
Correct, yeah. We actually have a developer at the intersection of Mill Road. They're planning on, we've asked them, we've told them to. They're gonna do a section of sidewalk on Foster. So my goal is next year to connect into that. So now we will have sidewalk almost to Hartwood.
To your specifications.
To my specific, yeah, they have to meet my standards, so I review all the plans ahead of time, so.
Great.
And so our 5-year outlook, I try not to get too specific, because I've found in the last 2 years, every time I get specific, the winter blows the roads up and changes everything. But we're definitely gonna do Mattawanakee Trail Phase 2, which will complete that road, as well as Gilson Road from the railroad tracks to Great Road, which will complete that road. And then various pavement preservations, a little more mill and overlay, stuff like that. Go ahead, Ethan. And then 2022, I'm hoping that the water department will replace the water main by then, because if they do, then I can reconstruct that road. That's my goal.
And we're also hoping that this will be concurrent with anything that the sewer project might have in terms of.
Yeah, we
pipeline.
would not do anything until the sewer's done, and 2022 is a safe bet that we will be done before then. And I mean, it needs gas main as well, but I've told the gas company, and they understand that when I'm ready to go, they will go in ahead of time, so that way we're not having to do work twice. And then FY 2023, so I would really love to get this neighborhood, Meadowbrook, Fletcher, Queen, that whole neighborhood done. Every one of them needs a water main, so it's up to the water department. I keep pushing them, but it's 5 years out, 5 years out. I've been here 3 years and it's still 5 years out, so to speak. So it's on there. I want to get them done. I do. I'm ready to go as soon as they are. So, go ahead, Anthony. And then 2024, this is another big one, to Hadawan Road. I'd love to do this. This one's super expensive.
Water main as well.
Well, yeah, it's a full reconstruction with water main, so. Good. And then the tip project, so this is a fun one. We actually got programmed into the FY 2024 tip. So Foster Street is technically on there at 4 million and change. As well as Bruce Street. Bruce Street actually got pushed up from FY 20, the light at Bruce Street, from 2023 to 2021. So that's fantastic news. It's unbelievably amazing that we got programmed. And I think we got programmed because.
Why is that? It just-
Because you almost never get programmed the first year you submit for the tip. We put a lot of effort in with the MPO to reiterate the fact and prove that we are serious about this project. We had meetings with them, we've shown them that we have full funding in place for design, so I think that does go a long way. So, as of right now, we're programmed for FY 2024. The thought is, this time next year, we're gonna go back, we'll have full 25% design done. The public hearing and for MassDOT will be hopefully completed by now, and we'll be really close to submitting 100% design. At that point, we will actually go back and ask to be pushed up the tip.
I assume some of their interest, the state's interest, is because it's a feeder off of the train station.
You'd think so, but MassDOT they're two totally
Okay.
separate entities. We've
Okay.
we've used that as the argument.
And they don't, you know.
They don't necessarily disagree. The MPO is not necessarily MassDOT, so they might have more of a appetite for that.
Well, my follow-up question is still the same, is if they're investing at this level or expecting to invest at that time at this level, do they have any say over the design work you were anticipating earlier in the process for the intersection of Tehadawon and Foster? Would they, that's being done in-house,
The
right?
Harwood and Foster intersection?
No, the Foster and Tehadawon
Oh.
one.
No, that was all me.
Okay, but I'm saying is their commitment here won't allow them to dictate anything there,
Nope.
correct?
No, that's totally outside their purview. They won't intercede there. And in the end, I've designed that intersection to MassDOT standards. So if they were to ever say anything, it would just be yep, okay, you did it the way we were.
And it was basically their recommendation when we went and met with them that, that they'll connect the dots. You do with the upper end, we do this end, and then you make the case for the rest of the tail.
Yep.
I could just conceivably see them saying, well, we want that to flow as quick as possible, and accentuating the curve so that people coming down
No,
Foster
you would
wouldn't
think
have
so.
to stop and put the.
They're actually very sensitive to the fact that that is a very heavily residential road.
Okay.
And they understand the differences. Basically, once we hit the train station heading north, it totally changes the dynamic of the road. They know that, and they actually agree with doing something much different in that neighborhood as opposed to what we've proposed going the other direction, so. Is there another one? I don't remember if I have another slide.
No, like
Oh, that's it. So, that's it. I don't know if you have any other questions.
Board members?
Hold on. I think the only questions I have was just coordinating with LWD. All right, so we've been asking for sidewalks, we heard from the master plan, addressing that, appreciate you kind of following what our goals are and putting it to work. Just relative to this cold in place recycling, they reclaim the existing asphalt, and add a binder to it?
Yeah, what it does is, we bring the reclaimer in and we add, cement, concrete, Portland
Something
cement.
like that,
Yeah, Portland cement, water, and usually liquid asphalt to the machine that mills it all back up and lays it out. So what we do is, in essence, the binder or the gravel that we're putting back down, 4 inches ends up acting as if it's another inch of asphalt. So it lasts longer, resists cracking, and then we go on top of that with another 1.5 inches of, 3.5 inches of top. So really, it's almost like we're
Base.
getting 4.5 inches of asphalt for the cost of 3.5. So it's a really neat product. Manchester, New Hampshire uses it all the time in their really heavy truck traffic. So we're gonna do it on Newtown Road, because that road is just horribly bad. So, yeah.
So from Goldsmith to.
From Goldsmith
Yeah.
up to, we're gonna go from Goldsmith to Tehadawon. Tehadawon. And if the bids come in low enough, then we'll push it farther. These are all dependent. I mean, last year, what I showed on there, we ended up doing almost another mile worth of work because the bids came in lower. So we were able to just
You
extend.
did Goldsmith to Newtown to Hattawan, right?
We're gonna do Newtown Road from Shaker Lane up
Yeah,
to,
okay, Right.
I guess, yeah, Tehadawon's the second one.
Yeah.
I get confused. They
I
all
would
should-
then to add on. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Any other board questions, comments?
No, great.
Tell you, three
Great
years
work.
in, it's great
Oh,
work.
Yeah, so
Stats.
the 3 years before I was here, we did about 6 miles worth of road total in those 3 years. Since I've started, we've done something between crack sealing, whatever, on 32.3 miles,
Wow.
including what we'll be doing this year. So, and we've done it in the appropriation. We haven't had to borrow a penny.
That's terrific.
So it's working.
In, I know it differs from the amount of traffic you get, but you need to do something to every road about every 15 years, right?
I like to try to do it every 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah. But being crack sealing, after 5, 6 years, and that buys us another couple of years and do something like that. 5 years is really, like kind of what we did 5, 6 years ago. We're gonna actually go on Neshoba. I think you probably did that 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
We're gonna go and start crack sealing that this year.
So you're not far away from meeting that goal, too?
Yep.
huh? Terrific.
Yeah, so it's working. Another couple of years, we get through some of these big expensive projects, we're funding the design of Foster Street and all these through our appropriation. So once we can get through some of these big, heavy construction projects, we'll have that much more to be able to fund some of these other resurfacing projects.
What's your assessment of how the crack sealing and that program's working?
So I think it's working, but it's easy for me to think that because it's mine. We actually have Beta, our engineering firm. We've gotten rid of Street Scan and we've hired Beta, and they're going to re-rate all of our roads hopefully next month. So then I'll have an actual number to say we started at 70, or I think we were at like 65 when I first started. Let's see where we got to.
Has the material changed? Is that part of it? What you seal
Yes,
with?
what happens is Mass DOT allows you to put more recycled asphalt product, and they let you count the liquid asphalt content in that as part of your overall liquid asphalt content. So you've seen a noticeable drop in quality of pavement in the last 20 years. That's why roads 30, 40 years ago lasted forever, now they just don't. We also use a lot more salt. Salt doesn't help anything.
Right.
We just use salt, not sand. So it's more traffic. Cars are heavier, trucks are heavier. So it's everything. That's why we're trying to, we got to just do something different than what we used to do 30 years ago. And I seem to think it's working, so.
So street scan's gone, you get Beta in.
Yes.
What about C-Click Fix? How's that working out for us?
We're using it. We still have it. It's not nearly as popular as I would have thought. I'm hoping that's
Is
a
it a
good.
marketing issue for us? I mean,
I don't know. No, because we do
Really?
market it out. I
Well,
I'm
give-
hoping it's
give-
maybe-
Give the public another chance to know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
here.
so
You might as well speak to it,
C-Click
yeah.
Fix is our, I'll call it our pothole watch software. You can go on our website or C-Click Fix and search on our
Folks,
phone.
pick up your phone, you see a
And if you
pothole,
pothole, you
boom.
log it, it comes to us, and within at least the next day, or if we get it soon enough that day, we usually can get them fixed.
I'm gonna make a suggestion.
Yes.
At least for the few hundred people that we get at town meeting, we should have something that explains the C-Click Fix. If it's
Yeah,
a
okay.
postcard
Maybe
that
a
people
little-
can.
or a
they can-
table
They
or
can
something.
have the app while they're
We
sitting
have,
there listening to the introductions.
We absolutely can get some of that marketing type material.
Yeah.
If you can work with Kirby, they normally do a loop before town meeting starts. That'd be a
Okay.
great place to put
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just to get the word out there.
Yeah.
You know, I think it is a good app. I've used it and I've noticed that the responsiveness is,
I just figured we're so good at patching potholes, we don't have any in town, so.
yeah.
Yeah, that's one possibility.
That's, yeah, no, absolutely.
Just not going down the right roads.
Yeah, no, there you go. We're not going
Stay on
down
the same couple
Stay,
of roads that
wait,
you
stay
know you
on
paved.
Taylor Street, and it's nice and new now,
Yeah,
so.
there you go.
Is that how your driveway gets done?
I'm not going that far.
Is this thing on?
Again, great thanks, and I believe you're looking for a motion here.
Yes,
and
please.
so I would ask the board, Madam Clerk, yeah.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the roadway improvements
Got
it.
maintenance
Awesome.
plan as presented by the Director of Public Works.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Selectman DeCoe, seconded by Selectman Napoli. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Good work, thank you.
Things moving.
Yeah, doing good, too. Next up, Parks, Rec, and Continuing Education. I saw we had Tim Mikowski. I saw you were getting Bigfoot and your boss is here, but you're,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you're fine to.
He
to,
is excellent.
Just look at me now.
How's everybody doing?
Just look at me and I'll flip this. Well,
No problem.
Okay, terrific.
I'm well. thank you.
And what we're getting, I presume, is the summer 2019 Long Lake Beach update.
Yep.
And some of us were at Long Lake Beach for the late winter, early spring update, which was a wonderful event last Saturday, but I'm sure you'll do all the touting you need in your presentation, so welcome.
Thank you. So we just were asked by Anthony to come and give you a brief update of some of the new things and just a kind of general overview of what is going to be going on at the lake this summer. So this is my going into the third summer of Long Lake Beach operations. So important things to look at this year, 2019 operating season is going to run from May 25th to June 16th, weekends only. We'll go full-time June 18th through September 2nd. So full-time being hours of operations. The lifeguards, important operation change. Lifeguards will no longer go off duty at 5:30. They'll be there till 7 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays, and it'll be 11 to 7 on Sundays. The snack shack and the rentals will actually stay open until 8 p.m. now. So just to kind of work those shoulder operations as far as we were leaving the beach at 6, we were seeing some of our busiest, heaviest uses after that time. So, you know, to be there and be present at the park and be able to, you know, be there for safety reasons, we extended those at the request of citizens and in looking at our operations. So for the past 2 years, we've really been looking at, you know, the beach passes and how to make them better. When Alicia started here, the beach was kind of in dire straits, deficit spending every single year to, you know, fund the lifeguards, fund the operations that were down there. The year before I got here, we were at about a $30,000 loss. In the past 2 years, we've gotten ourselves to a break-even point where we're able to support the beach and actually turn a little bit of a profit for the first time last year. One of the major changes is, you know, the intention was never to have a parking pass. It was always meant to be a beach pass. So we started enforcing that again. Last year, we went to a PIN system, just kind of playing around with the idea that a couple other places had used. And we did find it to be a little bit cumbersome for not only the end user and the residents, but for us to really kind of keep track of that, people losing them. So what we did this year was we actually went to a membership pass, a card, that does a lot for, these are actually some dummy ones of my family, so you can take a look at them.
dummy and family.
And then that's the parking pass, you guys haven't seen it, it goes in the window. So these new passes, what they have is it's a picture ID for everybody. We don't always have to refer to the computer system now. We can just look at it and say, yep, that's Chuck. You know, he matches his picture, he's good to go. The other thing is it allows us to do, as you can see on there, there's a note section. So we can put on there if a child's under the age of 13, we can put that in there. Everybody under the age of 13 requires adult supervision. If we have somebody who, parents want to say if found, or as you can see on mine, I put I'm allergic to bees. If we find somebody unconscious, we might be able to help them a little quicker or give the FD or police a little bit more of an idea when looking into these things. Just go back for 1 second. The other thing the barcode allows us to do is give us a check-in and check-out process. So it records, as we scan these, what time Joe's grandkids got to the beach. So if maybe somebody goes missing, or we have somebody just kind of looking for somebody, we can say, well, they were here at 9:54. If they checked out, we can let them know that information as well. So it gives us a starting point in some of that. They're scannable, they're searchable, and the other thing you can do, it's one-stop shop. If you don't want to bring your wallet to the beach with you for fear of losing it, these cards, you can load them individually. So if you have 2, 3 kids, you can give them each $10, and one kid can't spend the other kid's $10. It's tied to their account. So for camp, for sailing, a lot of our other programs, this is nice. You don't have to keep giving your kids $10 every day or whatever while you're down there. So season pass costs, we took some of the advice that we were given last year as far as we only offered a family and a senior rate. So we were kind of asked at looking at coming up with some different ideas. So in our December meeting, when we set the rates all the time, each time for the year in the Park Commission, we came up with these numbers. So the family rate is $60. And that is for anybody living under the same roof up to the age of 23 years old. And then the non-resident rate, we moved from $100 to $125. One of the creations that we did was the resident rate of $25 individual. So now there's an individual fee rather than having to pay that family rate. Non-resident of $50, couple of $40 and $75. The senior rate, we took down $10 for senior residents at $15. If it's a senior pair living in the same household, $15 covers you for the whole season for both of you. If you're a single senior, it's still $15 for that. Past non-resident seniors
What's
remain
the
at
age on senior?
65. And non-resident seniors, we kept at 25. Parking rates stayed the same, so if you don't have an annual pass, it's still $15 for residents, $20 for non-residents. The per person rate is $4 for residents, non-residents are $5. So if you're bringing a friend to the beach for the day or a grandchild with you for the beach and you have your pass, you'll just buy the $4 wristband for the day. Seniors don't have to pay the daily parking rate if they don't have an annual pass. They just need to pay for the $4 wristband for the day if they're just visiting. All of our daily pass rates still remain the same, that once you've spent the same value as your annual pass, we convert that for you. So you're not spending anything extra. Questions on any of that? All right, programming. So we're going to still have our swim lessons going on, junior guard program, our community sailing program. New this year, we're working with Fish and Game to come up with a kids fishing and family excursion to do some fishing out on the lake for families who wouldn't necessarily find it accessible to be able to get out there by boat and have the rods and reels. We're looking at creating a kids pirate adventure that we're going to run on the weekends that can also be utilized for birthday parties. John is running our winter cornhole league where it was very successful, so we're going to bring that to the beach this summer. And we've added sunrise yoga on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Events, we're going to bring back the kickoff to summer party. We did that the first summer that I was here. We kind of skipped over it and played with something last year, but we are going to bring that back along with the movie. We're going to do a couple more movies as well at the beach this summer. Haven't decided on the schedule on that yet. Events that we're kind of playing around with are the Taste of Littleton down at the beach to hopefully do some type of sun evening type tasting event down at the beach for adults. And then we were talking about the possibility of doing a 4th of July fireworks show. The Appleman Triathlon. As far as offerings, what we're looking to do is we are looking for possibly bringing hot food options to the beach. Making a partnership with somebody like the Littleton Sub Shop and finding a way that we could do hamburgers, hot dogs, french fries, so families aren't having to always either call out or run off the beach to figure out what they're going to do for dinner. Some of the food trucks that you saw at our third Thursday events, so Rangers Barbecue, Phoenix Rising Pizza, we're going to invite them, and they're hopefully going to be there on some Fridays, select Friday and Saturday nights, so that, families who are getting off work who are at the beach don't have to worry about, finding somewhere else to go eat.
So how close would you say to reality are some of these items on this list here?
Specifically?
Well, I guess the full food menu, the fireworks, that sort of thing.
So, the food menu, that's really something that is less likely right now. I would say maybe 40% on the way there. I've had the conversations with the sub shop. I've had the conversations with Jim Garaffi. Really, it's a matter of how can we convert the snack shack to be able to be up to health code to where we need to get to. What does that outdoor kitchen look like, and how do we facilitate that? So I think the reality is, while we'd love to have it this year, it's probably going to be something that's really going to work into next year. Maybe August, we might be able to get things up and running and have a pilot for what it's going to look like next summer. The fireworks is just kind of something that we started playing around with last year and saying, is this an event that's feasible to do? So far this year, I talked to a fireworks company at the conference we were at last week. I've had conversations with Scott, figuring out, how it would impact the fire department. I spoke with Sergeant Busey from the PD in our conversation about all the special events and our details. And then I spoke with Amy upstairs as far as a conservation standpoint to get her input. Other than that, right now it's kind of just an information collection. I think
I just want to be clear for people listening in, if they think this stuff's
yeah.
scheduled, it's not, it's in the works.
No, correct. So I think the next step would be is to, on a larger scale, get Chief Bernard, Chief Wisniewski, Amy, and whoever else kind of is on that high level kind of information to get those inputs. And then if it seems like it's something that's feasible for us, to, get the right amount of sponsors in order to kind of fund it, bring it in here. If it's feasible to have PD resources, FD resources, work on that, road closures, the idea would be to possibly close down like Lakeshore Drive theoretically to create some more space, do some parking at the schools, maybe rent a couple school buses in order to, manage people getting back and forth to the actual viewing area. These are the things that we all need to decide, and it's just in the kind of data collection phase right now.
Terrific.
And then last but not least, one of the things that we asked for kind of in CPC funding, we are at the critical juncture where the bathhouse probably isn't going to get done with our current state of the septic down there. We are on a tight tank. New construction is kind of outside of what we're able to do. So, realizing that stuff does need to still get accomplished and trying to answer some of the requests and promises we've made in the past couple of years. We did request some funds to be removed from the CPC in order to do kind of more of an update here. Things that we're looking at possibly doing, so I'll just kind of work the way from Lakeshore Drive. So the white lines would kind of simulate some temporary seasonal PVC fencing that we would put up. That would really to be increased safety, so kids aren't riding bicycles from the beach right out into Lakeshore Drive. It kind of makes a stopgap. Also gives us a spot on the busier days to really check people coming into the beach. Same thing as far as the parking lot and on the both sides of the parking lot, just to create an area where cars can park and kids aren't necessarily always running across the parking lot. We'd be looking to move the snack shack out of the parking lot and over towards where those two parking spots by the boat ramp are, to create more of a little picnic area, get the kids out of the parking lot once again. Where the snack shack was, create an area where there's some additional outdoor changing areas and some additional shower stations. In front of the playground, you kind of see that red square. As that exists right now, that's about 1.5 feet kind of Lowe's block wall that was put up. Not only is it crumbling right now, but it's a tripping hazard. You always see parents and grandparents going back to take a picture, and we've had a couple people fall back over it. The intention is to put 6 to 7 play panels there, interactive play panels, expand the playground, but create more of a natural barrier, more of a barrier for people from just falling over that wall. Working with Diane Crory right now. I asked her to get in contact with the gentleman who's in charge of the American with Disabilities Act, the yellow lines that you see. What we would do is hopefully create some temporary boardwalks that we put down in the summertime that we can pick up at the end of the year in order to give egress from Lakeshore Drive to the parking lot and from the bathhouse down to the waterway. That's something that we really don't have any of. The other thing that we've priced out in that is the addition of 2 water wheelchairs to add, so that guests with disabilities can come down and go out into the water. They have floats on them. You can float them all the way out on the water, play on the sand, and we would create some sort of a use kind of, so, if somebody's not coming every day and monopolizing it, we would try to get a shared use on those. Lastly, if we are going to keep that bathhouse around, it needs a roof. So, we would explore the option of seeing if we work with the tech or just pricing it outright just to have that roof redone until we can find a viable septic option to get that new building there. Questions?
Board members?
No.
Boy, it's a lot of activity, a lot of forward thinking. And,
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Alicia, Mike Prue, Commissioner Prue, anything to add to Kevin's presentation?
I just had, based on the beach rates, they went up again, they went up this year. For those of you who don't know, we had to increase the rates on all our lifeguards to stay competitive with the state parks. So you'll see at town meeting, our request for pay hikes for those lifeguards. So in order to continue to break even on the beach, we opted to raise them a little bit, so that should cover us. But as far as the commission's mindset is that users of the beach in that park should be the ones who are paying for the upkeep. So that's why the beach fees we implemented. The system we did last year, and again, we are trying to continue to break even so that we're not taking from our other programs to have to finance the beach.
And it wasn't spoken to here, but I assume there's a hardship provision option within Park and Rec on any of these fees. Do you have any kind of scholarship program?
We don't currently have anything hard written on that. We do have scholarships available for our programming.
Right.
But I think that, if that's something that the board wants the commission to discuss.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any outstanding issues. I mean, if the rates were high to the point that we'd hear about it, we'd hear about it.
Yeah, and, to the same point that when we were asked this last year, we are significantly lower than the neighboring communities when it comes to our rates to use the park. That was one of the thoughts in bumping the out-of-town rate up, because we know that people are coming here based on the fact that it's much cheaper than their communities.
Do you have numbers on that? Or,
I do. I don't have them right here in front of me,
roughly,
but
are a number of folks
roughly as far as users.
out of town?
So it's about 60% out-of-town users to 40% in-town users. The summer before, it was about a 70-30 split. So, yeah, last year we did 698 total beach passes that came out to right around $40,000 worth of revenue.
That's terrific. Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have guessed that at all.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for the time, the energy, and the effort that goes into this. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, and, to the point that, we're really trying to figure out how to continue to, generate some revenue. There is some stuff down at the beach that we're working, closely with the Clean Lakes Commission, with Amy and Conservation. There was a wonderful project that was done before my time, where you have the catch basins and the rain gardens, you have the 2 trees and the planters in the front of the parking lot, as well as the frog pond and the pavers. A project that I'm not sure what the total was on, but, the reality was there's a maintenance plan that was never kept up on. So, some of these ideas that we have are ways to generate additional revenue, to be able to bring the vac truck in and clean the pavers like they're supposed to be on an annual basis, to recharge the dirt and the succulents and the mulch at the front of the parking lot, to catch the oils and debris that are coming down the parking lot, to, fund things like the Goose Patrol. We brought the Goose Patrol in last year. We saw for the first time our E. coli levels were in single digits for the entire summer. You know, in a summer where most of the beaches, 80% in the surrounding communities were shut down for some period of time last summer, we didn't see that, you know, which we really feel is attributed to bringing Mark in and kind of removing some of the geese from the swim area. So the data's there to support that, and, you know, some of these things that we're doing are just to create revenue streams to keep that stuff going, to keep the lake healthy, to keep, you know, the area clean and open all the time.
Well, I'll say, it's a high level of professionalism, high level of constant thought for new programming. You're doing it, you know, within your financial mandate, and I'd say you're doing it in a, you know, as reasonably, you know, affordable means as possible. So, great job for the folks of Littleton that Park and Rec is providing, especially at the beach.
Thank you.
Folks?
Thank you.
And you gave us a nice segue on clean lakes, too. Chuck?
Just a real quick jump in on the goose, on the Goose Away.
The Goose Patrol.
The Goose
Mark
Patrol.
Buell, yes.
So,
Sway.
there's, some of the business parks around, Monarch Drive has something called, it's a goose deterrent. It looks like a beacon.
Yep.
It's solar powered, and it, within like a day, they saw results. They have, down on Monarch Drive, they have a pond out back, and they had all kinds of problems with their staff going out and having to clean up a lot of.
Yeah, so in our research, we that was one of the things we looked at.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we could go back and explore. At the time, you know, in doing the research last year, it kind of had the same effectiveness as the coyotes. If you didn't have somebody who was dedicated at moving it around, they kind of just got used to it being there, similar to, you know, the flashing lights you would see at marinas. The other thing is the, you know, the constant strobe of a light. Is that something, you know, especially with, you know, how dark it is down there, where we need to put it, you know, what's that gonna look like flashing throughout the night or anything else? But we definitely could do more research and see if that's a viable option as well.
Awesome. If I find that information, I'll just forward it to you.
Great.
One-on-one.
Yep.
Just take a look at it.
Thank you very much. Keep
Awesome.
up the
Great,
great
thank you,
work.
good work.
Thank you all. Thank you for the position
right.
as well.
All right, as Tim alluded to, there's Clean Lakes, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
There's a component of all this too, it is John Folsom. Good to see you, John.
I might be running solo tonight.
Okay, was Corey supposed to be with you here too?
Corey was overbooked tonight.
Oh, okay.
And,
All right.
so he asked me to come in.
You're
and
up
he's-
to the task, I'm sure.
Well, you know, we'll field anything.
All right.
But I guess it's mostly about Mill Pond tonight.
Yeah, what was billed here was an update on the Mill Pond dredging process, so.
We were hoping to have,
Everyone familiar with John Folsom, the chairman of the Clean Lakes
been
Committee?
chairman forever. But of course, we've been working on Mill Pond forever, too.
Yes.
So it's been an almost 20-year effort of discussion and moving forward. You all got the mailer from Corey a couple of
Yes,
days ago.
yeah.
So that kind of gives us our status there. We were hoping that Adam Burnett would be here tonight. He's our project manager with the Army Corps of Engineers. And they're working on a feasibility study right now.
Yeah, we do have Corey's letter, but just for the benefit of folks in town who might be interested in the airways, if you can encapsulate a little bit of what's been going on.
We have progressed every year, to my amazement, and come up with new schemes. The primary problem is, we're looking at Mill Pond, and Mill Pond has been inundated with silt for decades now. And it has been an ongoing problem for the 20 years, almost the 20 years of our existence, and certainly long before that. And yet there are people in town who remember actually jumping in the water and swimming around and boating and fishing, and
And
it's,
silt isn't the only problem there, right? There's some
It's, it is-
vegetation fed by the flow too from.
it has been an ongoing problem because it's really the first catch basin, if you will, for all sorts of debris that comes, even as far as Harvard,
Right.
with the farms and nutrient runoff from fertilizers and so on. So it's the first place where things kind of accumulate. We had to go to the Army Corps because we're talking dredging. There are a number of small basins that comprise Mill Pond. It's like 5 different basins, a few of which are almost beyond reclaim, but we're looking at 1 and 2 that flank the bridge out there and trying to restore those 2 as the primary visual impact that Mill Pond presents, and you can see it from 495 as you're driving down. And it's gone from a pond that used to have areas that were 8 to 12 feet deep to now generally being about 3 feet deep. And most of it's just muck. We do have a gravel bottom, and we're going to work down to that gravel bottom again. The Army Corps wants to actually do some deep pools and introduce some real diversity in terms of fish life and so on, as well as bird habitat and what have you. And so the primary undertaking this year has been to aim towards pumping most of this dredged material away from the site, actually to beyond the railroad tracks, if you know Basin 3, which is kind of just swampy right now. It goes over there, and then we would either have it dried and treated and removed as fill, as some sort of enhancement for landscaping use or what have you.
So that would be over toward Taylor Street, is that right?
Over towards Taylor Street, and there's a facility over there that might actually give us a hand in terms of dealing with that. And our problem in the past few years has been what exactly to do with the pumped debris. It has to be dewatered. We planned at one point in time, we're still looking at a number of options, but there's the possibility of creating small islands and masses with that, and swampland and so on, that filters water that's coming into Mill Pond. So it's something we're looking forward to seeing from the Army Corps in terms of their range of options, and we're hoping to see those results on the feasibility study when it's released later this year, probably this summer. And then we'll bring that in front of the people, bring it to you, we'll bring it to the public, present it to the residents that will be affected over there in Mill Pond. That's kind of our status on things.
Okay. So the current year's activity is what? Yeah, I know you're looking at like a $900,000 overall.
We are, and most of that,
Over
all
15
of our
years?
activities at Mill Pond are pretty much on the shoulders of the Army Corps right now.
Right.
And they're doing their research, their documentation, their drawings, and coming up with their proposals. And it'll range from doing absolutely nothing to doing sort of a maximum. Right now, we're looking at something that's approaching $3 million as a total project cost. Most of that, probably 60-70% of the later work will be done and covered by the Army Corps, and the town will be responsible for about 30%. So, large undertaking, and it just seems to have been taking forever, but it's really, we want to make it work, we want to make sense of it,
And to date, though, the federal government has been good about holding up their end of the bargain?
I find it frustrating. We're subject to world news where, they had to shut things down and go to Afghanistan for a while. I mean, these guys have literally, like traveled the world to help other people, and Mill Pond just hasn't got the clout that we wish it had. And yet we're closer. We're at the top of the list now. So we've got to stick to it and really and see to it that we can follow through. When they release the feasibility study, we'll be able to analyze what they want. The town can give us some input. There'll be public input, of course. We may refine it from there based on that information, and hopefully get us to a point where something very exciting can happen, especially for the two basins. One which was all private, and we've had that given over to the town at this point. And so a lot of legal stuff, it's just kind of boggles the mind. Biggest project we've ever taken on is the Clean Lakes Committee.
You've been working closely with the water department on this?
Like, the water department is integral. That Corey has done yeoman's work, and of course, he just sort of shoves it off. But he's really been the ace to put things together and to look for possibilities. We could not move forward without him. We're really just laymen, concerned about things, but unable to move forward. So. Looking forward to the results from the Army Corps and getting back to you guys with some details.
Great.
Rather than the wish list.
Board members, any questions, comments? And I will open it up to the public too.
I've got some questions
Sure.
relative to the silt. I mean, if we're
Yep.
pumping that out and it's dewatered, it can be used as, I mean, is there any concerns that this isn't something that we could in turn reuse, or?
A few years back, we actually found evidence of some PCPs over near the railroad tracks. That's in the third basin, we're not going anywhere near that, and it doesn't ooze in to the project scope at this point, so that's isolated. Otherwise, it's really just an accumulation of things that have been neglected for so long that it's just nasty.
So if we had a need for like an earthen berm, just for sound mitigation along the highway or something like that, and we wanted to use it, you know,
I think
challenge is
it's
getting-
entirely possible. Now, the Army Corps has said that they would want to build sort of emergent wetlands, is what they're calling it. So cattails, something that would be supported, so if you stepped on it, it would be soft. But beyond that, I think this eventually goes back to soil. The talk of these islands, you'd build sort of what they call a coir wall, the stalks that are all knit together. And as that holds things up for a while, as this dewaters, it begins to stabilize. And as it's planted out and the plants take root, they hold that soil, so.
Okay. I do note that we have a water commissioner here with us. Bruce, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to the commentary to date?
Just to restate how important the quarry is to all of us, and that how pleased we are with his participation in these projects, and we plan to fully support them.
Okay. Progress is being made, just a couple expensive years ahead of us.
Yeah.
There's money flying out, vast quantities, and we're grateful. I think our cell tower funds will sort of create a situation where we can fund things with a bond or whatever.
I think it's in the letter, right? Spectacle Pond, cell tower funds?
Yeah. And so that won't create a situation where we'll need some sort of special tax or something on the residents. So we're hoping for at least a soft cushion there, so that's.
If the Army Corps doesn't go off to Afghanistan again, is there any kind of timetable? I know we've waited 20 years now, but is there any guess? Are we 5 years away?
I'd like to say we're 5 years away, and yet I can't assure you of that, because I thought 10 years ago we were 5 years away. And it's been a frustrating process, and yet a revelation every single year. This year, the whole notion of sort of creating islands, and then the whole notion of maybe eliminating islands altogether and just pumping things away, and having that material off-site. The pumped material is then treated and dealt with by a private firm, and it's great. We had issues for years where the Army Corps said, "You guys ready to move forward?" And we thought we had a facility where we could truck the dredged material, and that fell through. We didn't have any property, and they said, "Well, if you can't deal with the dredged material, then we can't dig it out." They want a job. They want a job that can be assured will start, finish, and then succeed, and last for at least 75 years.
If it's fully dredged, is there a way of keeping sediment not coming back in again, so in 75 years, the same thing's not happening?
There'll be, that's one of the criteria that the Army Corps insists on, that this does not return to its current state, and that their project will ensure that is done. So they'll go through a number of scenarios and say, okay, this is acceptable, this is acceptable, this is unacceptable, because it won't last. And they're not interested in spending the money if it doesn't last.
Okay, great. Any other board member questions or comments? Otherwise, members of the public, any questions for the Clean Lakes Committee? Mike?
Mike Brewer, White Pine Drive, one block over from Mill Pond. So I went to a meeting about 4 years ago at the water department about this, and heard the
Any
same.
day now, right?
Heard the same thing, and, I totally understand, I hear you, as far as the timeline, we are dealing with the Army Corps. But at that meeting, one of the issues was that you guys or whoever had to get permission from the landowners that own the land under the water.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still an issue, or has that been rectified?
It has not been rectified. And I think it's still an issue, but I think it's going to be something that's resolved very simply. We haven't addressed it for a while because we haven't got the scope of the work. It's that chicken or the egg thing, you know? But I think it's going to be a situation where people can deed over their portion of land that's underwater to the town. And there'll be some sort of a dollar exchange or something, like a dollar, you know? Like, that's the agreement, because it has to be done. We can't spend public money to improve private land.
Right.
Is the crux of the matter. And so when that comes to a fore, and I hope it comes to the fore this summer, when we have the results of the feasibility study, we can tell people, this is where things stand. You know, we can't make, you know, the people who just happen to have property that borders the pond, you know, the beneficiaries of the public money. It's just not fair.
Right.
So that's where that becomes a sticking point. And the town has to accept that the Army Corps can't work on private land. So they need a right of way, and they need a clear title.
And have you had any preliminary discussions with these landowners?
We have not any further than our discussions just in public.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got details.
Right.
So,
All right, thanks.
sir.
All right, well, we hope there's significant progress by the next time we see you, John.
It's a long crawl.
It ebbs and flows, right?
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. All right. Next up on our agenda are public input and member updates. So if there are any members of the public here who would like to address an issue that's not otherwise on our agenda, we will be happy to hear from you. If it is an item that we're going to be discussing at some other point on the agenda, then I would just ask you to speak to it at that time. Ma'am?
Hi, Joni Coleman, Whitcomb Ave. I had a couple questions about the proposed water treatment plant to be located on those protected fields on Whitcomb Ave.
Yeah, that is on our agenda. There's
Well, there's the amendment to the town meeting proposals on the agenda, but not specifically other questions about the water treatment location?
Well, if we're gonna, what I would suggest to the board is, if we're gonna hear it now, then we'll address it all now, and we're not gonna take a variation of the question now and then address it again later. So if you'd like to speak to the,
Do it all at once.
all at once, that's fine. If you'd like to speak to it, and,
I'd rather follow it to the agenda.
Okay.
As stated, you know, any
Okay.
business, it's
I
not
know Mr.
addressed.
Carr said he was coming from the.
okay.
Yeah, the rest-
Yeah, actually, since it relates to issues that members of the Light and Water Commission, I'm just reminded, who are expecting to be here for our discussion on that with the voter articles, or the town articles, including voter petitions, probably the appropriate time is to speak to it at that point. So you'll have your chance then.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yes?
Michael Lyden, 22 Sanderson Road. I also would like to talk about the Whitcomb Ave water treatment plant. I just want it to be known that I showed up here for 7:15 for the public comment. If it has to be that way, but I will wait. But,
Yeah,
just
well,
wanted to-
it's just, the norm is, public input is for items that are not otherwise on the agenda. That is on the
I
agenda.
did have the same opinion where it's a little bit different.
We'll give you the latitude to speak to it at that
Okay,
point.
thank
We
you
just
very much.
think it makes more sense to have everybody in the room who can help answer those questions.
Okay.
Great. All right. Any other public, sir?
Dustin Neal, 17 Lakeshore Drive. Park and Rec does a great job with many of their programs. Lots of great ideas. I commend them for the great ideas that were on their presentation tonight. The fireworks isn't one of them, however. As many people know, I paddle and hike the lake frequently at sunrise, and I'm very in tune with the wildlife that's out there. One of the things that makes our neighborhood great is that it's densely populated at one end of the lake and a pristine natural area at the other end. We've got two great conservation properties at that end of the lake. Lots of wildlife that would be disturbed by this. I've had dozens of neighbors come up to me from many angles saying how a fireworks display is not appropriate for that. So I would just encourage the board to reconsider that, not reconsider, but carefully consider that idea, because it probably isn't what we want from a crowd control, from a natural environment standpoint, lots of other angles. I know there'll be lots of public input if that is an idea that moves forward, so I just ask everybody to
Okay.
reconsider that.
Terrific input. I note that there are still folks here from the Park and Rec Department, and you probably, since any proposal along those lines would generate from the Park and Rec Department, you might want to memorialize that to them first, and thank you for bringing it up.
I have and will, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Board members. Selectman Napoli.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about the Littleton Station Working Group Community Forum that took place on Friday night and Saturday morning this past week. That is something that's been put together by the Planning Board, the Littleton Station Working Group, with the help of Barrick Planning Group, the consultant that we retained with some grant funding and assistance from the town. And so it was really well attended. I was held at the middle school. The Friday night portion of it was more of an informational session, which just gave an overview talking about the MBTA station, the Taylor Foster Street area, and some of the issues in that part of town. It gave examples from other communities and what they're doing for development. And then Saturday morning was the visioning process of the forum. It wasn't as well attended, but it was interesting because there were some new faces Saturday morning that couldn't attend Friday night. And it broke everybody down into 6 stations where you could give your overall view of the community as a whole. You could talk, it talked about the economic issues that are going on in town. It talked about conservation pieces. It talked about sidewalk improvements on Foster Street. But I think it was really a healthy, productive discussion. And I know a lot of people have mentioned that they didn't know about it, and they wish that they had known about it, or if they could have attended. So there'll be more information. There's going to be more forums coming forward. I want everyone to be aware of that. But if you want updates on the project, you can go to the town's website. And under Planning Board, there is a tab called the Littleton Station Area Planning. And so you can just click on that tab. It'll give you all updates about what's going on and what's planned for the future with respect to that project.
Great, thank you. Selectman Knox?
Just want to mention one thing. I know today that Selectman Napoli and myself both was sent pictures of Church Meadows. I want to bring it up because on March 11th, we had the Agricultural Commission here talking about Church Meadows and what could be done in the future. It had been let go for a year, and it's all overgrown, and they're trying to solve that problem. But today, I guess there's 5 beehives that showed up on town property, and this board, no one else in town government knows where they came from, and no one has permission to be on that property doing that. So if anyone knows where they came from, please let us know so we can find out what's going on.
Okay, Selectman DeCoste?
I think somebody forgot to say something during the public input session, so if, I do have something to say, but just relative to this.
Relative to this, there were some people who were using Church Meadows, I believe, as a sublessor.
In the past, yes.
For bees, so I can try and get to.
But we don't have any signed agreement with anybody right
No,
now.
I know.
So the sublessor is
Yeah.
to nobody that's leasing it.
And
It's
But it's a
the, and
good
the
place to
previous
start.
tenants have been
called a
noticed.
squatter.
No, I know, yeah, but it's a good place to start digging, and I'll get to work on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
All right, so I have a couple things. One of them is relative to the Economic Development Committee, which I represent on our board as a member of the Economic Development Committee. And one of the things that we've done is we've kind of, not redesigned, but kind of shaking things up a little bit and taking a look at what are like a couple of goals that we really want to get done. We've taken a look at a mission statement and a vision statement. And I want to, kind of take my hat off to all the members of the Economic Development Committee and say, thank you for all your time and effort in jumping into this. And one thing that has kind of come of this is looking at the retention of the business, not just looking to do economic development for bringing new people in, but also retaining those businesses that we do have in town, working with the LBA and working with different groups. And one tenant that is potentially looking at new space is Dover Saddlery. Dover Saddlery is a big employer in town. They employ over 150 employees at Christmas time or during the holidays. Their number goes up a bit. And I've got it on good authority that they're looking at some space at Devon's. So just anybody that hears anything from everybody's plugged into different networks and that kind of thing. Please let us know if you know of an employee or a business in town that is, or a business looking to come to town, or, maybe looking for new space. Let us know, whether it's the Board of Selectmen, the Town Administrator's Office, the Economic Development Committee, see something, say something kind of mentality. Hopefully, this is something that we kind of caught early enough so that we can nip it in the bud and we can keep Dover Salary in Littleton. So that's something that I'm, on behalf of the Economic Development Committee and the Board of Selectmen, I'm working on that. But just want to kind of get that word out there. In that same vein, it takes all of us to run the town, really. I mean, there's 5 of us that were elected to the Board of Selectmen, there's 5 people elected to the Planning Board, and it's, it's a bunch of volunteers that give up their time for different committees and that kind of thing. So to hear when people say that they didn't know about the sessions on Friday and Saturday, the postcard went out to every single household. It was in the Independent. We run it on the TV. We plug it. Every one of our, not that I think there's a huge audience out there watching us right now, but each of us as residents of this community have to pay attention, and we have to kind of own our own little piece of Littleton. And if we want to make it better, it's going to take all of us. And that's why we have the public input, and we look for input from everybody. It's not that hard to get a hold of us. You can definitely find our information. So please reach out. If you're not pleased with something, let us know. If we get surprised and we're not able to react quickly enough, it's tougher to try to fix things after something's been done. So I urge people to get engaged. That's all.
Okay, great, good food for thought. Reminds me that we haven't seen our friends, your colleagues on the EDC for a while, so maybe right after town meeting, we'll schedule a
Yeah, absolutely. It's on
chance
our
for you
plan.
guys to come in.
It's on our plan as well.
Good. Okay, 2 items on my front. Just Cindy spoke to one of the many things that were going on a busy Saturday, last Saturday, but just occurred to me, I went from the visioning session at the, relative to Littleton Station and the master plan implementation to the polar plunge. I was Chief Bernard's still
left.
here. Anyway, there was over 80 folks between the folks that Sue Harvey at the high school and other participation for Park and Rec. The police department had a great presence. That was at the beach, Long Lake. Nobody knew it was going to be such a warm day there, so it wasn't quite the L Street Brownies on New Year's Day, but it was pretty impressive. And all over town, lacrosse games and soccer and tennis, the town was coming to life, and it was just if you had the chance just to drive around Littleton on Saturday, you could just appreciate what a community we have here and the ways that it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. So it just felt good. And I was not here at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, so this mention is a couple weeks old, but I think would be remiss if we didn't note the passing a few weeks back of a real distinguished Littleton resident, John Whitcomb Hathaway, who many of us remember as Assistant Superintendent of Schools for many years, a member of the Littleton Historic Society. In many ways, he was a walking history of the town. Anything you wanted to know, you could just ask him. And for 92 years, we had that privilege, and we don't have that anymore. And John was also one of the town's last surviving World War II veterans, and just a great guy. And so the town misses him. Okay, next item up on our agenda.
I hate to
Sure.
come back after the nice memorialization of John, but the fire department has burn permits. You mentioned
Yes.
the weekend, and people going around all weekend. A lot of people are burning, and I'm assuming that everybody has a
Do
permit.
illegal.
It's $10. You can do it online, you can print it out at home, so it's $10 to get a burn permit. You can stop by the fire department and get it, or you can do it online and print it out. But just do it legal, bring a hose out there, just make sure that doing the right thing.
Good, thank you. Next agenda item is a report from our marijuana licensing working group, and we have 2 members of our board, Selectmen DeCoste and Napoli, as well as planning board members. I see Anna and Ed are both here. Great, thank you for joining us. Council is here too or not?
No, I
Chris is not here?
spoke with Chris earlier today.
Okay.
I think we've kind of gone through this enough that I don't think there's any need for us to
Okay.
get the meter running.
All right. I don't know who you've decided upon for making the presentation, but whoever it is,
Okay.
I can start, and you guys can jump in if you want. Want me to
Sure.
Go that way? All right, so in our packets, we do have the proposed language for our RFI, our request for information. So we've kind of gone back and forth with a bunch of different iterations, and it does outline what we're expecting from applicants. Let me back it up a little bit. So there's basically three different things we can do. We can do something like this proposal and let people know, hey, it's open. If you want to show us that you're interested, just meet these criteria, and we'll follow a process. We can go out and recruit if we think there's an operator out there that we've seen in the news or we've heard about that we think is someone that we want to entertain as, just like we would for any other business. We want to go out and try to recruit a Dover Saddlery or Olympus or any other business that we want to bring into Littleton. Or we can kind of do nothing and just let it happen organically. So we've chosen collectively to put together the four of us as a working group, and we've taken kind of the direction of the Cannabis Control Commission, as well as what some other communities have done. Anna and Cindy did a lot of, not that Ed and I didn't do any work, but Anna and Cindy kind of compiled a lot of different information from other communities, and it helped us to kind of boil it down to something that was our proposed request for interest, that we're hoping that we can bring forward to the board tonight. We've had an opportunity to look through it, and
Right.
once we agree that this is the document, or this is the process that we want to follow, we can actually start that clock running. I'm not sure we'll be able to do anything by 4/20, which is the date that many are hoping to execute on, but we're hopeful that we can begin to look at applicants, and if we do find any applicants that we feel as though we want to have operating in Littleton, then we can begin the contract negotiations for a host community agreement. Just some information, the town of Leicester, Anthony, you can correct me on this number if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. The town of Leicester just came out, they were the first shop that opened up, retail shop that opened up, I believe, at least in this area, and they just came out with their first quarter. First quarter, what the town brought in, their 3%, and it was 400,000?
No, it was 200
Sideline.
and just shy of 250, around there.
Just under a quarter
250,
million?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, 'cause that's because I was doing the math and trying to figure out what,
Right.
even if we got a third, that's right, so,
Yep.
yeah. So, for a quarter, they brought in almost $250,000 just going after that 3% from the sales tax, from the sale. So, I spoke about economic development earlier, and this is something that we voted in as a town. We voted in at a statewide ballot question, and multiple different revisions to our bylaws and different iterations at planning board, at Board of Selectmen, and other boards have discussed how we're gonna move forward, and is this something that we want in Littleton? And the voters told us, yes, this is something we want in Littleton. We want to bring retail, adult use marijuana establishments. And so we're limited to 2 because it's tied to the number, the state ties it to the number of liquor licenses we have. We have 7 off-premise liquor licenses, so that 20% of that number is 1.4. The state won't let us round down, so we're rounding up to 2. So we are allowed to have up to 2 establishments once we go through this process and vet some operators. So, I don't know if you guys want to add anything. The only thing that I will add that I didn't, in speaking with Chris today, there was one edit that he suggested on page 2. I don't know if you have this, Anthony.
I don't have it, if you want me to get
On
it up?
page 2, number 5, you don't have to. It's not a whole lot to it. It's worded right now, it says Board of Selectmen will meet applicants and vote to begin host community agreement, HCA negotiations with 2 finalists with 14 days from the date of the last interview. So that with before the 14 days should be within, so it's really a sick more than anything. And at the beginning of the sentence, Board of Selectmen, instead of will, he changed that to may.
Okay,
And host community agreement, HCA negotiations with up to 2 finalists.
okay,
One of his concerns there was if we didn't, we may not get 2 finalists.
Right.
So it's like, it would preclude us from moving forward if we only had 1 finalist.
Right.
We voted on
okay.
2 finalists.
So we did this for retail because we discussed the license limitation, but we also drafted one for non-retail. And really, my thought process with the intent behind that was just to have a clear understanding of what documentation we were expecting to receive from non-retail applicants, not so much so to actually issue an RFI. So, I don't know, we haven't really talked that in depth
We
about
haven't really
that.
collectively as a group.
Right.
But Chris thought that it would be better for us to kind of leave that alone for now.
Okay.
Let it happen organically because we're not tied to a number. We could,
Right, so that was going to be my question. So instead of using this form as an RFI, what if we just use it in general as a guide? And like we had an applicant come before us for the testing, he gave us some information in his presentation, but there was some gaps there based upon the drafting of the retail requests, gaps in information that we were looking for on the retail side that we probably should look for as well for other establishments. So at least we could go back to him and say, or any applicant and say, thank you for the information, but this is really a more thorough guide for what we're looking for from you.
so go with the RFI for the retail establishments, but use that same RFI information, the criteria that we have put forth.
Just as a
the
guide,
no,
yeah.
I think that's
Okay,
If I may reiterate what Cindy's saying, I think Ann is in agreement that we feel like it's a clear path forward for anybody that comes forward with anything outside of a retail establishment. It's gonna grab the information that we're looking for any proposal in that field. Similar to a building permit, a homeowner can apply for it, but at least it gives them a clear path forward in what they're applying for, and they get the answers to their questions, and hopefully we do too.
My only other thought relative to having an RFI for the other businesses, let's just use the testing lab as an example, is do we want to state the city of Holyoke is actively getting their name out there as Pot City. I mean, they want to bring as
Right.
many businesses as possible because they do truly see this as part of their rebuilding and rebirth.
Right.
And helping their economic development. By putting an RFI out there for other uses, are we saying come one, come all? Or do we want to kind of slow play it? Let's go after the, frankly,
I
the
think it should be
revenue.
used more as just a
guide.
a guide.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I-
For the non-retail.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that.
okay.
Okay. We do have your work product here as part of our package, which of course has been available at least online since the end of last week, right, Anthony? For
Yes.
the public. What I'd like to do is get some initial board commentary, and then members of the public too. I've got some thoughts on it, I'm sure a lot of folks do. Appreciate very much your hard work. We were wrestling with this for a while, so for the 4 of you, and principally, was it Town Council Chris Heaper?
Correct.
Was helping you with this? Great. Thanks a lot. The hard work is evident here. But I'll open it to board members' questions first, and Joe, you, not being a part of the committee, do you have any?
No, I just want to listen to everything's being going on, a little hard work they've done, and I read through it, but I think you certainly have a lot more input than I would have at this point.
All right. I've got 4 points that are not necessarily specific to any paragraph or citation, but they're more general. There were considerations I had going into reading the document, and then afterward, I still think they're worth considering. One is I hope that what we adopt is not so onerous that we do ourselves the disfavor of making it difficult for smaller or local outfits to petition, and that we aren't just setting a stage where we are benefiting, for want of a better word, the Walmarts and McDonald's of the marijuana world, and making it easy for, big cannabis to roll in. So I think we want to be conscious that isn't a byproduct of our process. Two, I'd like a little more discussion of the rationale behind a task force. Any other licensing we do, if we set criteria, it comes directly to the board and isn't winnowed out before it gets to the board as a whole. So I think I'd like to, have a little more conversation on that end. That if we have a stringent enough process that we all agree on, that the winnowing merely be just an administrative function that either the administrator or town council could perform, so that the board gets to, anybody who wants to petition the board has an opportunity to petition the board. Thirdly is just on the awarding of applications, whether we have enough evidence to determine whether or not now we should be firm in a calendar, or whether we should just keep it open until we have more information based on applicants, whether we should award the two we have immediately as part of a process, or whether we should open it up and see what comes in over time and award them as we see candidates come forward that we're happy with. And the fourth thing I would just ask is that after our discussion tonight, I'd like to, again, remind the public that, we have these draft, what are we rephrasing? Request for interest, and invite, public comment on that, written or otherwise, after tonight, just so people have a fair opportunity. I don't know, I don't have a lot of detailed critique of the proposals, but those general parameters I'd like to.
Can I have another question too? Going by what you said too, Paul, I didn't know if this is legal or not, but during the process, is it possible that we could award one right away and then examine how it's working out before doing two at a time? But I didn't know, because I had heard in some towns they had problems with that, with the legality of doing that, so I don't.
So, again, so the city of Salem did have a problem with that. And nothing's come of it. There has been some litigation that has been put forward, but it hasn't come to pass at this point. That's one of the reasons on that number 5, where I told you there was a change. There would be up to 2. We're allowed to have up to 2.
So that provides the latitude there, you think?
Gives us the opportunity, if we have one applicant come in or 20 applicants come in, it gives us the opportunity to have one finalist that the Board of Selectmen chooses and says, okay, we're gonna go forward with one for now. We're gonna kind of see how it goes.
And we may have 10 other
Maybe
applicants,
learn
but
our
we're just
lessons.
not that thrilled with them.
Perhaps.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be able to come back to us
Reapply,
again.
sure.
Yeah,
Yep,
right.
okay.
So,
you think that page 2, number 5,
that
changes?
specific question, I
Yeah.
think that's the
Okay,
case.
I'm
A lot of
good with that.
what you were raising, Paul, like the small or local preference, that kind of thing, a lot of that has to do with, any of the blue sections that you
Yep.
see in here references, Mass CMR.
So a lot of it you think is
lot of it is
dictated by the
addressed in
state? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm going to phone a friend on this. Anna, can I just call on you for 1 second? We had developed a whole timeline. And didn't we decide on a date certain to submit the RFIs by? Didn't we have a deadline to have them submitted in general? Or no?
We have the timeline based off of whenever this is finally approved. So it's
Right.
X number of days. But,
Right. But I don't think we were going to keep open for the retail side.
Correct, so I think what we had talked about.
I don't think it was open-ended.
Have the dates open, and then it would come to a close on a particular.
Yeah.
14 days. That's what we wrote in here. That's what we,
Also, if I may speak to another.
Sure.
point that
Yeah,
Mr.
no.
Paul made was, as we were drafting this, we did put in a preference, and a preference could be determined by the task force or the working group. In our conversations, we did talk about a local preference being part of that process, so
it's on page 4. It's listed as preference, but, you know, as a group, we talked about it as a local preference, so.
Okay, yeah.
I guess what I'm referring to is number 2 on page 1. Applicants complete RFI and submit it back to the town on or
Before.
blank.
And Ed, where was the language you were referring to that had a local preference? Is that in?
Page 4, second
Okay,
paragraph,
thank
says
you.
the town task force will
Yep.
review in all responses and in discretion and determination in order of preference. And we had talked about it being a local preference. I think we dropped that language at some
All right.
point, so.
All right. Again, I appreciate and like that language. I just think as far as an awarding process, I haven't seen precedent, and haven't seen an argument yet why, you know, if we have the right criteria in place that you guys have developed, that we can't just have those folks apply to the board directly and, you know, rather than go through an intermediary board. But that's, you know,
I guess it's similar to like a hiring process, when we go through a screening committee or something like that, just to bring forward to the board. We have a criteria, a job description, you know, and that kind of thing for.
but it isn't like other licensing things we do. I mean, folks are free to, you know, apply directly to the board as long as the criteria is established for everybody.
Basically, we use a lot of the guidance that either CCC had put forward or other communities had.
Is that what other communities are doing, a lot of that?
I can't say a lot, there's not a lot to
Right,
go off of.
Okay, Ed?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just, in speaking with Anna for a second, we're not opposed to that at all, by all means, if you guys want to conduct the interviews. I was just saying if it's.
Oh, it's just, it's
if-
generally licenses, you know, there aren't too many things that,
I think we gotta be looking for I's dotted and T's crossed.
Yep.
You know, I don't think we're gonna tell anybody
Right.
no.
well, no, I mean, there's language in here about determining preference, right?
Well, again, that goes back to local preference, minority owned, stuff like that.
Yeah.
By all means, we weren't looking to hold anybody back, and if you guys want to, we were just imagining more than 2 applications coming in, and thought that, you know, the work that you guys are already doing, you could break it off and just say, hey, before you step forward, you need these 3 more documents, or you're missing this one piece of information that they're gonna be looking for.
Yeah, on a procedural level, I can see that, but as far as pre-ranking applicants, that's, you know, that's kind of, in my mind, anyway, it won't step beyond what the norm is for any of the licenses we do. I just imagine that eventually, once it's adopted and becomes the norm, this will just be part of our annual slate of you know, licenses and applications that are, you know, renewal and, you know, and oversights done by our public safety departments, et cetera, et cetera.
I think we have the same vision. I don't
Okay,
think-
yeah, I can't imagine we're too far apart.
Right.
And the closest thing we could even come to try to draw any kind of parallel would be when there was an extra liquor license.
Right.
And we had 3 applicants come
Yep.
in, we had them come before the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
It was only 3, it was a finite number,
Right.
so I think,
Right.
to Ed's point, we anticipated having a larger number of applicants.
No
It's a good-
doubt.
It's a good
Yeah.
location, you know, it's,
That could be a fun night, though.
it might, yeah, depending upon the number of applicants, if we do it, yeah, it's the pleasure of the board.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna get hung up on that point right now, but I would, you know, I just throw that out there, that's, beyond that, I mean, you put a lot of detail in here, and I'm pretty cool with most of it, and I appreciate it. It's thoughtful, it looks like it would hold up well. I mean, this is a heavily scrutinized area of municipal licensing, as we all know. You know, we can fully expect the state to overturn all of this at some point, when, depending upon whose interests are being served, but, you know, for the short term anyway, where it looks, you know, I think we're being well served by your efforts. I'll ask the public if the board's okay with that, if there are folks that want to comment on either the specific documents or the general topic. Sir?
Again, Michael Lyden, 22 Sanderson Road. Just a question for the RFI. Is it part of the process for them to have a site in mind when they come to you with that information? Or is that something that you guys have, you know, a couple of locations in mind that you would give them the choice of?
You want to speak to that?
I can speak to it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just have one more thing. You mentioned the Leicester shop. I know they had enormous problems with traffic. I know that, you know, the demand will die down. It will be less of a problem in the future, but, you know, traffic around here is already crazy with 495 and everything like that, people cutting through to go other places. So I just wanted to know if that was part of your plan or if that was something that they would be bringing to you.
So it's our plan. So to answer the second question first, they are required, based upon this document, to come to us with not only a parking plan, but a business plan. So it's pretty inclusive. The other question was?
Site
Location.
location.
So site locations is based upon what's already been voted on by town meeting. So the residents decided where this is allowed.
In the bigger scope, but the application process also requests that, or requires that they identify a specific
They have to
location.
have,
Yeah.
they have to have a specific location, and it has to be not only identified, there's gotta be, they've gotta have a committed location that they can't just say, well, we're gonna put it at XYZ Main Street. They've gotta have a specific address, and they've gotta have, I think, a letter of intent with either a landlord or purchase and sale or something like that with the property.
Mr. Through the chair, if I may, a traffic mitigation plan is required as well.
Okay,
And that
yep.
business plan.
That's in here.
Good questions, Mr. Sanders.
Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a few questions here. Considering all things here with the marijuana program or market for the town of Littleton, what is the scope that we're talking about? We're talking about issuing license. So we're talking about two retail establishment. What are some of the other components that you will be issuing license for? The testing?
R&D.
R&D? Well,
Not through this process, anyway. Do you want, either one of you want to speak to that, or anyone? I mean,
Go ahead.
This process is specific to what we're allowed by the state, the two retail spots. We have not developed any criteria for addressing any of the other potential marijuana-related businesses, R&D and I don't know what else there is.
But wouldn't that be?
Manufacturing, right.
But wouldn't that be in the scope? I mean, you know, when you're talking about marijuana here in the town, as to what, you taking the portions of it as it comes, or what?
You want to speak to that?
So-
It's specific under state law, right?
It is specific under state law, that we're allowed to negotiate, they have to have a host community agreement with us in order to operate. They have to have things in place, and a letter of non-opposition or a letter of support, and in order for them to get licensed by the CCC, they have to come to us and basically get our blessing.
And what they're allowed to do and not do was also spoken to.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the license aspect that the town of Littleton is looking at is that any component that come to you for a license, you're working on that portion to issue them license as to what they need to do?
So, I'm gonna answer this way. So there,
You mentioned.
so what we've done as a Commonwealth is we've said we're legalizing marijuana in Massachusetts for adult use.
Right.
What we've said as a community is we're going along with what the state said. We're gonna take advantage of this change in the states and the Commonwealth's laws that will allow us to have businesses in Littleton, and with the retail establishments where they can sell marijuana, we have the opportunity to have a 3% sales tax, and we've taken that vote at town meeting to be able to charge a 3% tax, just like a hotel tax or a meal tax. Those other businesses are considered just that, just other businesses that can operate, just like if we had a biotech company that came into town and they wanted to open up on Foster Street, you know, we can scrutinize, well, what kind of chemicals are you going to be using, and, but
So basically,
I guess maybe-
basically what I'm getting here is that the marijuana license is primarily just for the two retailers that we are authorized here in the town, and nothing else revolving around
Right,
marijuana.
right, yeah, there's, if we chose to get into it, there are separate processes for developing licensing for either manufacturing or testing, R&D work.
Yeah.
We already have a grow facility, and we had pre-existing regulations for that, but this, and the overarching state legislation that governs what we're doing It's very compact. It's only for retail sales, not those other activities on the same site.
But you already had someone come here asking for the testing, so.
Yeah, but we're not providing for that at this point. I mean, you're right, George, they did. But we're not, none of this would actually satisfy what they're looking to do as far as I can recall. I mean, unless they wanted to compete for one of the retail licenses.
But all is gonna have to have license, right?
Yes. Brownson?
Jenna Brownson, Harvard Road. When would you be anticipating publishing the RFI?
Well, we haven't formally worked on that. My suggestion, just earlier was just to have a public period to comment on it. I don't mind considering we haven't had significant enough changes to warrant, a redraft or anything. I'd just say we could work off of this draft and invite public opinion. I've already stated one, change that I would recommend personally, but if the board's okay with it, I would say open a period tonight and open it for discussion as to how long we want to remain it open before we close it and adopt regulations. It could be as quick as our next meeting or next meeting thereafter.
Right, yeah, so we have a whole timeline set out.
Is that in here?
No,
Okay.
But
it's
based
not.
upon-
But it's based upon this,
approving
this vote triggers
a
the
process.
timeline, yeah, exactly.
So if we voted tonight, and let me just say this, if we voted tonight to approve this document that we have with, with the edits that we've brought up, that would trigger a timeline, Anna, that has, is it 14 days for people to submit?
Yeah.
I think it's 14 days, and then we have 14 days to notify the applicants, and either pull them in or.
Because we were going to publish this, right? How are we going to issue the RFI?
No, I think we're just gonna, I don't.
Vote it, and there it is. It's available.
It's not
Okay.
put it on the
So we,
website.
I think we had talked about, okay,
Register, it's just.
Goes to the town website.
and that's it?
People that are interested in.
They're following.
Yeah, they know which communities are approved and.
Okay. All
I
right,
would just say for the community at large, those who might have opinions, this is their, in a lot of respects, their first exposure to the proposed documents, so we should at least give them a couple weeks to have input, come back before we adopt it.
If that's the way we wanna go, I think we've kind of done that, and if we're ready to start having people bring in applications
Right.
with the documents that we've prepared, that's what we were charged with doing.
Well, I'm just saying, we're here to
yeah,
serve.
because, well, this document's been presented in some form by Chris in prior meetings, and then we worked off of that. Yeah, no, then there are some red line changes, but I don't think they're significant, so.
Mr. Chair?
Sure, Anna?
So yes, I would agree that a comment period open to the public would be appropriate. And then if it's 2 weeks, and then revisit with the board for a vote.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Actually, Mr. Sanders,
All right,
just,
almost,
just,
yep.
just through you, if I may, to
Yep.
Anna. This public comment session, are you saying that we should have a public hearing, or we should just allow people to kind of just digest this and then come to our next meeting where we're prepared to make a change?
See what we have for input and agenda it at our next meeting with the intention of absorbing that input and ideally acting on it that night, but that's kind of driven by the, I'm not anticipating major changes. I mean, I put mine on the table. We haven't had a lot of input from the town, but a lot of people are going to see it for the first time on television if they have thoughts about it. If we voted it tonight and then they come in after the fact, it's like, oh, well.
I don't think that's the case, because I think the people that are interested one way or the other have either not been paying attention until a certain point, and then they started paying attention. I think that we have a responsibility. The voters voted for this, and we've kind of kicked the can for a long time. And
I'm not proposing kicking the can, I'm just saying we've got a specific process of how we're gonna do it, and this is the first time we've got to you know, the proposal on the table, so
What are we talking about?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah, that's fine. That's, if that's what the pleasure of the board is, then that's fine, but, I mean, we were charged with going back and.
Yeah, no, and he did a great job. I just don't think it's unreasonable to say, okay, we got it on the table, here it is, and now people have a little time to chew it over and see what they think, and that's really not a whole lot of time.
I would ask that any revisions or anything that we do have kind of be floated to
Oh, I think we should,
a small working group so that we can prepare the document through town council and get that so that we have something to work off of.
Right.
well, all right, I think all input ought to come into the board as a whole, and if you want to funnel it off, if you guys get it along the way and react to it on the fly, I don't have a problem with that, but I mean, I don't think,
I'm saying the same thing.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
So as input comes in, if you, Anthony, you can just forward it, make sure these folks in the working group get it in advance, and our intention then would be to agenda it at our next meeting, with the intention of adopting the RFI.
22nd.
Yep, 22nd, April 22nd.
And I doubt you're gonna get much input.
No.
But you're putting it out there for the public to have the opportunity.
Okay.
We should be putting liquor licenses in some of those regulations out there.
That's not, they're not exactly new. They've been on the, you know, that's been kind of traffic for the past 100, well, actually, since 1930, what, 2, 3? So, great work, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Sanders is still.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sanders, yes.
Sure, sounds 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, did this working committee come up with a fee for this license?
$50 application fee.
Is that what it is? It's a $50 application, and then there's a, what, a HCA to be...
That gets paid to the state. We didn't come up with it.
Yeah, yeah, it's all determined
It's
by
all
the state.
mandated by CCC. They're nice enough to allow us.
The state gets that money, or we get it?
The check is made out to the Commonwealth.
Yeah. They always get paid first, George. Okay. Thank you, board members, all of you, and we'll tackle that one again in a couple of weeks. We get time on the agenda, all right, for the 22nd, do we, Anthony? Sure. Okay. Thank you. On to the May 6, 2019 annual and special town meeting warrant articles. We have a couple of topics here. One is the board is yet to do its adoption of recommendations on articles. I think we probably did some of them along the way, didn't we, or did we not?
No, we haven't done any.
Any of them? Okay. But prior to that, we had promised time to, we don't always do this, but we were requested to provide time for one of the citizen petitions to speak, and
Can I recommend we just take the home rule petition first? We have Kent here, our paid consultant.
okay.
I think that might go
Right,
quicker.
right. Kent, all right, we'll get to the voter petition in a moment, but the first one, I guess, at interim town administrator's request, we'll hear from our Weston Sampson consultants relative to the home rule petition. Kent, do you want to speak to that? Which article is that, huh? Yeah,
Article
right.
21.
Yes, Article 21.
I'll be brief. I spoke at the last meeting, briefly, kind of same outline. We've given you a couple of documents in your packet. One is a 4.5-page.
New address.
We'll listen.
One is a 4.5-page draft of the home rule petition, which is what's been presented for town meeting. And this language has basically been put together by our folks with the help and some serious wordsmithing by your legal counsel. The intent of this is to generate an article that will serve as a petition to the state legislature. The state legislature will then hopefully take this petition and adopt it in a session and thereby grant Littleton the rights to essentially adopt the policies that will form the basis for the smart sewer program. And essentially, the majority of this lays out the ability for the town to do things that are both, in some cases, common to other towns, in part taking up parts of the state laws, which are subjects that we do things like betterments, the ability to send bills, to collect funds related to sewer improvements, to take actions, to set regulations, to actually build and operate the process, kind of do all those things that are necessary to run the process. With a couple of unusual pieces. The most unusual piece in the case of Littleton is this idea of allowing folks to opt out, which is probably the single most unique piece of this. But when you blend it all together, it still requires a very specific petition that gets in that allows you to do it the way you've sought as a community to do this project. So the goal of this is to adopt it, bring it forward at town meeting, adopt it at town meeting, and then get your legislative contingent to present it in the next legislative session. And it basically lays the groundwork. It does not include any funding at this time. This is really just the legal groundwork that would allow the town to proceed with the project. So, and in addition to the map and the 4.5-page document, there's also a kind of a half-page summary that was provided too, which should, I hope, made it into your packet as well. So.
Okay, so to underscore 2 points there, this is a requirement for us to, it's a legal requirement under state law for us to engage in this process, and perhaps more importantly for the local tuned audience, it's not a funding article, so nothing can happen until that piece happens, which we're not looking to do till the fall. All right. Any questions relative to the home rule petition article?
No.
Cindy?
No.
No? Okay.
No, it's good.
Okay. All right. Probably the least controversial part of the whole project, Kent. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman.
All right, then, with that, and thank you for your patience. Mr. Otto, I believe you're the petitioner and lead petitioner anyway, in charge of the article?
Yes. So, again, thank you for the invitation to come before you tonight. I'm speaking again for the voters' petitioned article titled Conservation of Whitcomb Avenue, Area Field and Groves. So, these are lands that the town and the town water department have told us are not to be built on. In practice, these lands have been preserved for at least 30 years, and in some cases, many more. In light of the plans first publicly announced in February of this year to build on some of these lands, we want to shore up the existing protections for all of them. This is a reaffirmation of protections that may have either been forgotten or are being questioned. As for the currently proposed water department project and field site, any plans for municipal development should be sited on land that has not already been set aside for protection. We believe there is still a need for due diligence and alternative site exploration. This includes paying public attention to recent citizens' comments and questions raised to members of this board, both verbally and in writing. We would like to encourage open participation in any such site selections going forward and assure that no one is overlooking the original intentions contained in the existing land documents. So, we ask for your support on this article. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. As is usual, I'll ask board members if they have any questions for the petitioner. Otherwise, I'm aware we have contingent from the water department here, including commissioners as well as staff. Those folks want to respond, but first, any board member questions, comments?
I'll go first. I feel as though, as the commissioners, we are here to represent the entire town and all the residents, and the impact, if this warrant were to pass, would be detrimental to the water quality. We've got professionals in town. We've got a fantastic, very reputable group of professionals and commissioners that have always done well by the town, have kept our rates low, and have always been great stewards of the lands that they've had. They've always raised concerns when we any consideration that's come up, when we do any kind of development of any of the property around any of our well sites. The full-time professionals as well as the commissioners have said, we can't because, and they've always worked with us to try to find some other solution that would benefit everybody involved. The Conservation Commission, the DEP have each ruled that this is, that they support this, and I think that this is, I don't know whether or not we're gonna take a vote to, we
Yeah,
typically
well,
don't,
we-
we typically don't take votes on.
It's certainly within our power, so we can
It's
just
within our
address
powers,
that
but
in
I
its course
just-
later.
Personally,
Yep,
as,
yep.
as an elected official for the town, I think this is an irresponsible warrant article, and I don't think it serves the community, and I don't think we would be doing our diligence for the community if we were to support it.
Okay, fair enough. Any other board member comments first? I know that I can see some folks back there who would like to address it. The water department's obviously very aware of this article and feels strongly. So if,
I wouldn't mind hearing from the water
okay,
commissioners.
terrific. Fine, whoever wants to speak first, Commissioner Carr, or even you, I don't know who,
Bring up the big guns.
all right, okay. Andrew Kitchen, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Again, thank you for letting us come forward to speak on this article. As you all know, this treatment plan has been in process approximately 2 years now. We've been to town meeting for funding, we've been to town meeting for the transfer of the surplus land to be transferred to the water department. In both cases, outstanding support through the entire community. We're looking to take that DPW site and return it back to its natural state. That's Zone 1 aquifer. That's a very, very sensitive area for the quality of our water. Where we propose this building is Zone 2. So DEP is in favor of that move. Conscom tonight did vote to, unanimously vote not to support this article. The planning board voted unanimously to support the building in its proposed location. The Zone 2 location. The commissioners, water commissioners unanimously voted to not support this petition also. As Selectman DeCoste said, you know, it could be detrimental to the quality of water for the entire town. This treatment plant's gonna service approximately 45% of our ratepayers. We're here to do what's best for the ratepayers. Great quality water at the best price we can get. So we'd ask the Board of Selectmen not to support this also. Anything else, Dave?
to add? You might want to identify yourself for the town that's not necessarily familiar with who you are.
Yep, I'm the Assistant General Manager, Dave Ketchen. Speaking more on what Jim said, we strive to protect our water resources, and for us, building in Zone 1 is irresponsible, especially when there's a Zone 2 location that is in the same vicinity and can be constructed for considerably less money. With that being said, Mr. Otto brought up the site selection and felt that it wasn't determined in a public nature. As Jim said, we've been to multiple public meetings for the past 2 years. We've discussed this at length at our board meetings, which no abutters have attended. So to us, that was determined in a public nature. And you guys all received the letter from Nick last Friday that sort of went through our due diligence and our process of selecting the site. And it's very obvious that this is the best site to have this plant be built at. And with that, we'd like to ask you guys to vote against this petition.
Okay. I do see we have 3 other commissioners here. If any of you folks want to add anything, or if you feel you've been sufficiently represented here. Yeah, Ivan's back there somewhere. Okay. Other than that, I'll open it up for board consideration, discussion.
One comment I want to make.
Okay, I'll get to that.
I've been in town my whole life, and I remember the water department, with all the buildings that they had down there, knew how sensitive that area was to start off with. Not even talking about the highway garage, it's finally going to be taken care of. But your own department was down there, and they took everything out of Zone 1 on purpose for the water quality. So I think for us to go against our own water commissioners who are serving the town, making sure our water is in its best quality, taking all the right actions would be detrimental to the town itself. If the water department, who is trying to make sure our water is safe, is confident in putting it in Zone 2, then I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Cindy, do you want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, what Chuck said was very well stated, and as well as Joe's comments as well. I mean, obviously, safeguards have been put in place to protect that area and ensure a healthy water supply for the town for years to come. And right now, there are residents in town. There was a previous meeting that a few of them came forward to speak. I think a few of them are here this evening, that they don't have a healthy water supply right now. They're having issues with their water supply. And so our water department and commissioners are doing what they've been championed to do. And that's to ensure a healthy water supply for the entire town of Littleton. So I have absolutely no problem with this process or the proposal for what they're planning to ensure that we do have healthy water for the entire town.
Okay. Citizens, if you'd like to speak up, this gentleman, I believe, was first in. Yep.
So I've never really done this before. I'm a first-time homeowner.
We're an easy audience. Go right ahead.
A little over a year ago. I work in the area. I've always heard that Littleton is all for the conservation of, public land, open space, and all that stuff. I have quite a bit written down here. I'm going to try and keep it.
Try and summarize it,
Yeah.
please. Yep.
So I'll go to this gentleman's comments. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. He said he's been, this has been in work for 2 years, give or take. So I guess one of my main concerns is that when this was brought to the town meeting last May 7th, I'm quoting from the layman's terms, which were dismissed rather rudely by Nick Lawler, the head of the water department. It says from Article 19 in the town meeting agenda that the Article 19 would fund a new well field and water treatment plant at the existing Whitcomb Avenue site. So as a layman with no experience, dealing with water treatment or anything like that, and I feel like as a normal citizen of the town, when I vote for something and it's presented to me in layman's terms so that it's something that I can understand and it's worded very carefully as existing site, and then who knows how long after is then changed to a site across the street in a site that was designated as aquifer protection, all that type of stuff. That's concerning to me. $7 million was approved to be borrowed, that the taxpayers are going to have to pay back after a number of years. I know they quoted a number, $6 and something increase per water customer. That might not seem like a lot, but that could add up, over the course of a number of years. With this being public money, it's appropriated by the town as something that is presented to the town, to the taxpayers, and then almost immediately changed. It is concerning to me as a citizen, as a taxpayer. So I would like to ask a number of questions to be considered by the Water Commission, by the Water Department, and by you, the Selectmen.
Depending upon how many you have, I'll just ask you to
It's
perhaps.
2 questions.
Okay,
2
fine,
questions.
fine. And ask them first, and if they choose to answer, I'll leave that to them.
So again, they quoted the 2 years that they've been working on this. Again, May 5th of last year, at the town meeting, they had the existing site as their original plan. Between May 7th, when it was approved, and when was the decision made to make it across the street? And then between that date and February 19th, which is when we, as abutters, received notice, have all these changes taken place, okay? I would like to say, I'm speaking for myself in this, I don't think any of the people that are involved in the opposition to this are against improving water quality, okay? Quality and quantity, obviously, it's great to have that. My main concern is how the situation was handled, and it brings up a lot of questions for me as to how maybe other things are handled, okay? It is concerning, and I really want to stress that, that this was misrepresented to the abutters, to the taxpayers, and whatever meetings or whatever had happened between the commission, the water department, and the selectmen really were not made available to the public as they said they were until February of this year when all these new plans suddenly appeared on the site.
Okay. Thank you. You folks want to take a shot at
Want to go with the
responding?
Attorney Board?
Yeah, so to speak to that, so that article, he was right, did mention the 76 and 74, or just 76 Wickham Ave area. But that article was strictly for borrowing the money to build the treatment facility. Once we got that passed, then we started in engineering with Ty and Bond, our consulting engineers. And it was determined that building in Zone 1 area would be significantly more money than if we found another site, which right across the street there was land that we owned. So we pursued a design there. We pursued engineering there, brought it to our board, I believe in September, which we've been open about. That's when we started working with the DP. And they gave us approval to build in that site, which was out of the Zone 1 area. So that answers that question. And yes, we followed the proper planning board procedures. We had a butters meeting in February, like that gentleman said, before we were really required to by the planning board.
Just one comment on as far as the openness. All our meetings is public, as yours are. They're all, the agendas are sent to town clerk and published. And posted, so, they're there. You were making comment about citizens in town taking, owning a portion of whatever we do in town. It's a prime example.
All right. Mr. Peterson first, and then, I guess he was waving
Hi,
before.
Neil Peterson, 119 Whitcomb Ave. We're actually one of those people that have had problems with the water. I've actually probably been to 2 water meetings. I don't think anyone else here probably can say that as a citizen. Where we talk about the problems with water, the water department helped clean our pipes, but we can't drink our water. It's been going on for about 4 years now. We buy bottled water for the house, and this has got to get corrected, and I highly request that you don't support this petition. And, another year delay to find new property isn't going to, unfortunately, Littleton's getting too big, there's too many people, and, so we do not support it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ma'am?
I have a couple questions, hopefully the water commissioners can answer, if you guys
Can you,
can't.
maybe just state your name for the record? I should
Jody
be
Coleman,
doing that.
Wickham
Right,
Ave.
thank you.
The first one is that the land was taken by eminent domain and used a grant by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it's protected by Article 97, which I assume you're familiar with, which says that any land taken for Article 97 purposes shall not be used for any other purposes unless approved by a 2/3 vote from the legislature, the Mass State Legislature. Has that happened?
Defer that question to the water commissioners, I'm not
Yep,
sure.
we're in the process of working with the DP on that. They fully support this plan. We're just figuring out if we have to purchase land that's equal to the land that we'll be building on, or if we have to pay back a portion of that grant.
So there's kind of 2 parts here. So violation of the terms of the grant would require, as he said, close to $500,000 for the water department to pay in order to go to that site. The second part is the Article 97, which requires them to get permission to change the use by the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, is that it here? I'll let them.
Nope.
Well, okay, well then why don't you get all your questions out and then we'll let them respond.
So the citizens voted by a 2/3 vote to take this land by eminent domain for the purpose of aquifer protection. I mean, maybe you can educate me on this. I don't know how the water department then changes its use without it, once again, going back before the town. I mean, that's how it was there in the first place, and the citizens voted for aquifer protection. And number 3, the water department themselves stated in their letter that they gave the citizens against this proposal, that they have 45 undeveloped sites in town. That doesn't include their own property that they have their headquarters at, that they had talked about having a sewage treatment plant there. We're not against having the water treatment plant conflating those two things makes it seem like we are. I hope your water gets better, I really do. I'm on the same exact well, and I have great water. I don't know what they're gonna do that's gonna clean the water,
Okay.
but, why can't they pick another spot?
Okay, I'll let them address that again, but again, this is, beyond the scope of what we generally afford to a citizen's petition. It's not our obligation to provide that much of a forum, but I'll let the water commissioners speak
Mr. Chairman,
again.
if I may, I believe town council as well as council for the water department has opined on this, has looked at all of these ramifications, and I trust the professionals that we pay to do, not only at the water department, but our council has looked at this and is not going to expose the town to any kind of litigation or, there's not going to be an exposure.
My only
All the
question to the
Ts-
commissioners would be to see if they have anything further they wanted to add on the record.
I think, Chuck, we've had discussion with town legal counsel, and, we are in right in what we're proposing.
Correct.
Legally.
All right, Mr. Mullen?
Ed Mullen, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. We had councilmen before us when the water department was there, and Article 97 was brought up by people of this petition, and town council just made reference to it is not a violation of Article 97. So the word violation was used again, and it's not a violation.
Okay, that's the risk of opening these things up a little bit too wide. It's not our bailiwick to adjudicate on that, so I'm a little uncomfortable getting too much into detail. But Mr. Sanders, I'll let you get perhaps a final comment on this before we entertain the board's actions.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, due to the Water Commission, what was the cost at the first location that caused you to pick another location?
No, we had an estimate from, if I may, from
Sure.
Ty and Bond, and it would be close to $1 million to build in Zone 1 as well as to dewater that location, 74 or 76 Wickham.
So what is the cost in
$1 million more?
the next location that you selected?
It would be a savings of $1 million and then plus whatever reimbursement we have with the DP.
Cost, construction cost estimate, do you have that?
$7 million, just what we went to.
Okay, great.
So a zero cost in the second location?
No, I think he said
It's a savings.
it's $1 million cheaper, $7 million as opposed to $8 million?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Mr. Rambacher?
Just a quick clarification on that, Mark Rambacher, 205. Is that $1 million before you pay back the $500,000 and have to buy another site, or after?
No, that's $1 million before.
So it's less than $1 million when if you have to pay back a $500,000.
That hasn't been
and if you have
determined
to-
yet.
That hasn't been determined yet,
It
but
hasn't been determined yet.
That's speculative. The
That was
$500,000
gonna be my
is
question.
speculative.
Right, but, okay.
Okay.
So it's not $1 million savings, it's less than $1 million.
It could be more than $1 million. We don't know. We don't have that information.
Too quick. Mr. Otto?
Yes, just two quick pieces here. So there was the mention about public meetings and, public engagement. I know I personally was engaged as a citizen. I spoke with multiple people at the water department prior to the May town meeting last year, specifically asking about, hey, this says at the existing site, and I wanted more details of that site. There was no site plan available, but there were verbal statements made about details on that site. At no time was there any discussion across the field. And again, as a citizen, who's in the past has trusted the water department, took that at their word, and then it was not until February of the following year, this year, that we discovered the change. And again, that was based upon the plan that was publicly submitted to initially the Conservation Commission, and they were only focused on the well aspect of that plan. We've been told by Amy Green specifically that the Conservation Commission is only approving the DEP wetlands stuff tied to the well site, not to the water treatment plant. And the second piece was, we are really asking for alternative site exploration beyond what we've just been told. I know I was speaking with Cindy just yesterday, and she did share some more details, which we have not had any visibility into. We were not provided any details about other sites. I understand that some other sites have been looked at. And thank you very much, Cindy, for sharing that information with me. I really appreciate it. I did reply to you with some additional questions. Not looking to get those answered now, but I would like to continue that conversation and flush some of that stuff out.
Okay.
Because there are various citizens' concerns tied to.
Well, we're not going to continue it too much more tonight, though,
Right,
but
so I just
thank
want
you.
to
All
leave
right.
that there, as there's still questions about alternative site exploration.
Okay, well, ma'am, I'll let you be the last
My
one.
name's Amy Tez. I live at 117 Whitcomb Avenue, and just a very quick statement that we do have serious water quality issues in our home, you know, and I am concerned about delaying this project further. It's been at least 5 years, if not more, of struggling with this issue, and at this point, it seems like there's plenty of information out there for us to make, as a town, a cost-effective decision. And I understand our neighborhood's been in a lot of flux with some building, but that site is across the street, and I think we're gonna get some cleanup on the other site as well. And most importantly, get our water quality up to snuff with all the building and all the people moving in. I think it's just so important to act now.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Just one final comment, Mr. Chair, real quick. As you are the CEOs of the town, we are commissioners, CEOs for the water department. I'm sure when decisions are made by this board, you'd like to hear them from citizens and not through staff. So I just mentioned that, you know, if folks got something to say to the water commissioners, come to our meetings, not through the staff.
Fair enough. Good.
Thank you.
Good, all right.
To that point, I mean, the tie and bond came back to you guys 6 months ago, or whatever it was.
Correct.
And then that had to go to DEP. DEP took a month or two to approve it. So, I mean, just to kind of get some of that timeline stuff, it's not like it was all being done under the cloak of darkness or in secret.
Right.
And to the chairman's point, to Mr. Carr's point, you know, it was all public meetings, and that's the only reason I know that.
Okay. Selectman DeCoste made the suggestion earlier that the board might want to take a vote on this. I will be happy to take it out of order of our regular review of the articles for recommendations, because interested parties are present here, rather than making you wait. So if that's the flavor of the board, I open it up for your input. What would you like to do on this article? Take a position, not take a position? Board members?
Well, personally, I'd like this board to take a position on this.
Yeah, I have no problem taking a position on it.
Yeah, I've made the statement that I'm not, historically, we haven't taken a position on voter petitions, but I think this is something that kind of flies in the face of us doing the right thing, and I'd be.
You want to make a motion?
I move the Board of Selectmen votes to not endorse or. Not recommend.
Do we have, what's the article number, Anthony?
It's Article 18.
Article 18. So I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to not recommend Article 18.
I would second that.
Okay, then the Selectman DeCoste has made a motion, Selectman Knox has seconded to not recommend Article 18, open for discussion. I'll offer this. I think it's perfectly legitimate for citizens to raise issues along the lines that you have. That's the way this works. If we get educated out of that process, that maybe things that we think are, you know, as transparent as they need to be, don't appear that way to the public, then I guess we need to always be mindful that we can do a little bit better job of that. And I'm not casting aspersions at anyone else about that, but for my part, anyway, I am very comfortable for the long-term and current stewardship of the water department with respect to the well site, that property, and the global approach they take to water in the town. But you know, it's not a bad thing to have concerned citizens raise concerns like this. Any other discussion points?
No.
Okay, then all those in favor of the motion, again, the motion is to not recommend. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we are on record with that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to the recommendations articles, but I'm gonna, if you wanna.
Keep moving.
Yeah, I did, we did see that, yeah, she sent the, what page was that?
Making the presentation on the final item?
Oh, yeah, I forgot him up,
Where we
right?
at, Paul? Affordable
Wake
housing?
up, wake up, let's find the water.
So we're doing,
Draft recommendations?
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be changed.
After this law, okay. So, yeah, it's good.
It's gone, okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry to be
All right.
sorry.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to figure out how. Thank you. They're in spirit.
I'm sure you had that permit on Sunday, too.
It's 8:45.
Yeah, so you're in charge.
We'll start, why don't you start at the top?
at the top, for the recommendation of,
Question for you, oh, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Do you want to do, assigning the articles while we're doing this, while we're going right down, or you want to save it for another meeting, do we?
Oh, because Chase is in here.
And we didn't, yeah, so he gets a lot of lifting. And we didn't
Last time that
call it
happened.
out, so I don't know. It's not on the agenda that not that it's really, there's any,
Okay, it's
not
just,
impactful.
we can do it at another meeting before town meeting, just
It would
thought
be
of
a good way to save time, but just only because Chase isn't here.
Yeah, it's whatever your pleasure. I just wanted to bring it up if you wanted to do
No,
it.
it's a good
If we
suggestion.
were to do it, we could do it as like a draft and then,
will he be speaking on the sewer part too? I mean, certain people, if he has that, then I'm,
Right, yeah, that's true,
a lot of
too.
preparation for,
Yeah, all right, so, yeah, because our next meeting's not till when?
22nd.
Yeah.
22nd, oh,
I mean, I assume he's going to be speaking on the sewer.
He is.
I mean,
I'll second it.
okay.
but in the special town meeting, how many, we won't be speaking on the library.
so special. I have a chart up there too, if that helps, Joe.
Hey, you're doing a lot of presenting at
Oh,
town
yeah.
meeting, by the
I
way.
am? Did you
Yep.
decide all that while I wasn't here? Do you really, you want to rethink that one, Chuck? Do you want me doing a lot of presenting? Good point.
That's true.
You only have 23 of them,
Okay. All right.
but Chase isn't here, so that's what one of the discussions was, do we want to make a draft of what?
Signing the articles tonight too, if
Yeah,
you
we
wanted to.
dealt with that before. I mean, we just, make some assumptions of what he might want to be interested in and, assign accordingly. Sure.
My only input was that we didn't post it, not that it's really.
Didn't post what?
That we're assigning the articles.
Signing the articles?
I don't think it's really
No.
impactful, but.
There wasn't.
Well, we can wait on that until the 22nd. We can do the recommendations on the assignments later if you want to do it that way.
Don't be,
I would prefer we do the assignments now, and if he has any changes he wants to make to it, we can
We
deal with
did
that.
put adopt recommendation, adopt recommendations, not assignment, never mind.
All right.
Never mind.
You want to fast walk us through this, Anthony?
Sure, I just created a couple of grids, and we can just go, starting at the special, go through each article, and then, and, yeah, we take one at a time, and we can really breeze
I
through
think we
this.
can do a slate right there. 1 through 6. We can do a yes
Let's get the
recommendation.
senior center stuff in there, so you folks might want to, one of you two ought to be in, speaking of that, Cindy or Chuck,
Right.
or splitting it up, however you
Well,
want.
so this is just recommendation, not recommendation. So I would say 1 through 6 would go down the line.
Oh, as
Yeah,
far as yes or no, yes,
recommending.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
And do we want to abstain on the other one?
Which is the other one? Oh,
The senior
7.
petition?
yeah, we didn't really have a,
A hand in that?
yeah.
Recommendation from, I was speaking with Keith today, he thought that if Article 6 passed the town meeting, that maybe the
be
petitioner
withdrawn.
would withdraw Article 7.
we don't know that for sure.
So let's take no action right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have not telegraphed to the town that we were going to entertain doing that, so I think not taking a position is probably fine. We're advocating 6, which speaks for itself, I think.
Right.
So 1 through 6.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just the legality of 7. I have no problem personally supporting number 7, but
So 1 through 6?
1 through 6 should be okay. Check, or an X, or whatever you use it.
Do you want to just take this motion and do the special now? And just put move Board of Selectmen vote to support the following on the special town meeting.
Yeah, since those were all in the, it's a
Article
separate
1 through
article,
Article 6.
motion anyway. Madam Clerk, you wanna?
1 through 6?
1 through 6 in the special town meeting.
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support the following articles in the May 6, 2019 special town meeting, warrants and direct the preparation of motions to be moved and seconded by said board, Articles 1 through 6.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman DeCoste. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Before moving on, I just have a question with number 7 again. If 1 through 6 gets voted on, 7, the petitioner doesn't remove it, and that gets voted, what's the legality where it says DCU building?
I don't think we know that yet. I mean, council can have an opinion, but it would still have to go to the AG's office for a review.
I think either one, either articles, special town meeting Article 6 or 7 would require another town meeting vote, so it would probably need to be cleaned up. Whatever
But there's a
happens, yeah.
possibility that 7 could be thrown out entirely by an
It could-
AG review. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Could also be amended on town meeting floor.
True. Yeah, I don't know how much amendment would be allowable in the four.
corners.
Right, exactly. Okay.
So that's the special?
Yeah.
So you're going to not take a position on that, Article 7, it's fine. All right, and then on the annual, looks like the first 15, pretty straightforward.
All the way down to 18 even, right? 17 rather.
17, 19,
No, we can do that slate of 1 through 17.
Are they all items within our purview that we, I mean, is there anything in there that we just wouldn't touch because it's not our,
The zoning amendment.
yeah, the
But,
zoning
I mean,
amendment?
we can make recommendations, that's all we're doing.
Right, but we should be conscious of that while we're looking at, which one is that?
The zoning amendment, Aquifer and Water Resource District.
Well, that's the one we're talking about, right?
no.
No. No, this is the common area, the
Yeah, that's
revised
expanding the water district.
So,
Do you want to go through 1 through 16?
yeah, I would just say 17, we've never really discussed that.
No, we haven't.
So you want to go 1 through 16 right now?
Everything else there is financial or one of our reports, right?
Yep.
It's all financial,
Yeah.
Stabilization, personnel bylaw.
Yep. Well, we want to do one slate of votes at the end?
That's
We'll just
fine.
keep
You wanna-
track of
you
the
wanna
Yeah,
keep track of
so far
16.
it's 1 through 16.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to,
18 we've already voted on, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
19.
19 will be included in that?
21.
Yeah, 20, say, for instance, say we didn't take a position on that, although it's kind of implicit in everything we've discussed where we are with that one. But
See,
21, that's ours, yeah. 22.
23,
I think we're right through 25. 21 through 25.
25, yeah.
Yeah. Is Article 23, that's our article, that was the moderator's article? I know we talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about it on March 11th.
I just want to make sure people have an opportunity to speak to it if they want, because we didn't really discuss it. I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either. I know some communities are 2 years, some communities 3 years.
Yeah.
I think we're the only one that-
I'm just surprised,
1 year.
does the clerk have the same opportunity under law to do the same thing?
She can't go more than 3.
What's that?
She can't go more than 3.
But she didn't choose to go up to 3, though, right? I mean, she didn't petition, she obviously didn't petition to do this.
No.
She is 3, oh, all right,
Oh,
all
she's
right.
3 now?
No, never mind me. Wait. Okay. Oh, so it was only the moderator that was the only,
Annual.
okay, all right. So,
So then you'd be, everything 17, 17, you already did 18, and 20, you wouldn't take a position on.
So 1 through 16, 19, 21 to 25.
Yep.
So you have some?
Yep. Is that it?
yeah, I think that does it.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support the following article.
Well, we're going to let the motion be made first, or then I'll.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support the following articles in the May 6, 2019 annual town meeting warrants and direct the preparation of motions to be moved and seconded by said board. Articles 1 through 16, 19, and Articles 21 through 25.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman Knox. Does anyone object if I entertain Mr. Sanders? Is your question relative to this vote, George?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone object to my taking his question here? No, okay, fine.
Thank
Please
you
be
very
quick.
much For that, George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I have a concern about Article 7. I noticed that y'all didn't put it in the list of approvals, right?
We didn't take a position one way or the other.
Okay, now my question is here. The petition was made out, and the clerk said that it was a legit petition. So,
Wording.
if there was a question on the wording, because she worded it.
Yeah, two different things. What passes muster at the clerk's level to get on the warrant may not pass muster with legal as to whether or not it's enactable. So that's two different things.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, why legal hasn't given you a decision on it?
Well, it's not their obligation to give a decision on a citizen petition.
Well, that means that it goes forward with you not saying anything about the petition, and if it passes at the town meeting, then what?
Then it'll go to the Attorney General's office for review. And council may well speak to it on town meeting floor if we request them to, or his office to.
Well, but if he can't tell you now, I don't see the reason for him to speak. at
Well,
that
I'm not going to get into it in detail, but
just-
citizens petitions are between the citizens and the voters themselves, and it's not our job to be, doing everybody's homework for them, really. Okay.
I disagree because
All right, I respect that, but we've encountered this issue before, and I feel comfortable that that's the correct approach.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is.
We got I have a vote on the table here.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate you
Yeah,
explaining this to me.
yeah.
My concern is that if the council does not tell you anything before it goes to the town meeting, I don't think he ought to speak at the town meeting.
Well, that's,
That's what I'm having concern with. If he can't tell you now, he shouldn't speak then.
he's raised concerns. We've talked about that openly, okay? So, but that's not a definitive ruling on the subject, and nor is council in a position to do anything more than give an opinion, all right? And that's where we're at.
The opinion of not naming a specific address has been brought up at many meetings, as you know. You've been present at all of them. Yet, the petition still came forth with a specific address. So, the diligence should have been done on the.
He's not hiding anything. The opinion's been out there. It's just, again, it's not the board's work, and he works for the board. Now, he has raised the concern that it's been talked about publicly, but that's, we'll let the town debate it on town meeting floor. And we do have a motion on the table. Everyone remembers what it is. Motion made.
Can I make one statement, though?
Sure.
It just, to Mr.
We're
Sanders.
in discussion, so that's fair.
Well, I understand the frustration, and normally, the funny thing is, Mr. Sanders, that not talking about this article, but talking about other petitioners' article today, when I was talking to the chairman, I think the whole board agrees, is that we're taking a stand that if a petitioner does it, then put something in, we shouldn't be the ones that, we shouldn't be sending it off to town council. And that's, we were talking not about this, but another article that came up that, so at times in the past, we've actually said, oh, maybe we'll have town council take a look at it. I don't think it's the responsibility of this board to do that. So, I mean, for me to go against what you're saying, I'm in support of it, but I don't think there's anything, we're not in the position as a board to say yes or no to it.
Just one more thing, Paul, if I may. Sometimes I think all three of these warrant voter petition articles are probably not binding, but it still could serve a purpose as far as really taking the temperature of the
Sure,
town.
yeah.
So and it can be a helpful tool to the Board of Selectmen or any other governing board that has affected of it. So it still could be
Yeah, that's generally why we don't take a heavy hand
Right.
on it, it's, let the public do their thing. Thank you. All right, so, any further discussion on the motion? Remember the motion.
Yeah,
Yeah, 1 through 16, 19, 21 through 25.
yeah,
Thank you. Okay, and those would
Made
be
by
all,
Mr. Napoli, second by Mr. Knox.
yeah.
all right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All right. So what, we're gonna go back and do assignments now?
We certainly could breeze through that if you
Pleasure of the
want.
board.
It's up to
You
you.
know, yeah,
Well, we can all submit our
There's an idea.
requests to Anthony and.
I can email this to you,
Yeah.
you all, and if you want to,
Just extend the matrix one more column, and
Yep,
if we want,
right
if there's
here.
if there's a particular one that we want to put our name.
and that's a
on,
way to allow Chase to have
Oh,
input.
there you go.
Except with the rest of us.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that gets us the heck out of here.
Right.
all right, I'll get that out, I'll get it.
But not quite yet, because Cindy's got a presentation here too. All right.
Elevator pitch, 3 minutes, let's go.
Yeah, I'm gonna
No,
breeze
that's
right
not
through the.
fair. I mean,
I don't even-
just because she's last on the agenda, that wasn't
All
her
right, it's
fault.
just for just for your benefit, but whatever.
Yep, no.
No action.
Good night, Steve.
Some questions.
Good night.
Okay, are we ready to move on to that agenda item? We okay with the town meeting warrant right now? Anthony will send out the matrix and we can chime in about what we're interested in, et cetera. You might have to prod us to respond, that sort of thing, Anthony, you're used to
Sure,
that?
what- Yeah, and plus it'll be on the agenda for the next board.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to walk in the door with, you know.
You have a matrix that says.
I'll throw water balloons and say,
Right,
hey.
right. Okay,
There you go.
all right. Our next, and I believe final item, item 8 in the agenda, affordable housing informational overview. Selectman Napoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am one of the co-chairs and trustees of the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust. And part of the goals of the master plan were to create the Affordable Housing Trust. But it was also to educate the public and other town boards about affordable housing in Littleton. So I put together this little presentation that I had shared at a public forum at the fire station that was not that well attended, but that's okay. And I also shared a little bit of it, more of a economic piece of this with the Economic Development Committee. But I just wanted to go through this quickly with you. This is from the Public Policy Center at UMass Dartmouth. It's just an overview of the town of Littleton. Our current population, 9,806 residents. I believe that number is probably higher at this point. Our average median household income in Littleton is $107,800. Our per capita income, $47,973. Presently, there's 9,463 jobs in Littleton, and you can see the next 2 points talk about our housing stock, which is really relevant to the need for affordable housing. 88% of our housing units are single-unit buildings, 90% are owner-occupied, and only 12% of our units are multi-unit buildings, and 10% renter-occupied. And our median sales home price is $451,000. So this is a challenge that we're facing with some of the data that we've gathered, is how to attract and retain residents of all ages to ensure the economic and cultural vitality of Littleton, and how to meet the needs of our growing population of seniors with services and affordable housing. So presently, our housing stock is incredibly unbalanced. We offer few housing choices outside of single-family units. And age groups 25 through 34 and 60-plus are most affected by the lack of housing options in Littleton. That is according to our housing production plan. And as you can see, in changes in householders, which was also part of our housing production plan, it talks about the type of housing that these age groups prefer. Basically affordable, minimal upkeep and maintenance, amenities, common areas and services. Seniors like the camaraderie, younger adults like the convenience. There's been a lot of initiatives by the planning board recently, as you know, with the bylaw changes, the senior affordable bylaw, the inclusionary zoning, the accessory dwelling bylaws, but they didn't really produce the degree of affordability that we were hoping to attain. And so what we're seeing now in Littleton is that we are lacking, we're below the state median average for millennials. the age group 20 through 34, we're below the state average on that. And what's going to happen is eventually as the boomers age out, the millennials population is huge. It really is overwhelming. I don't know if you've been to Boston lately, but if you see the degree of housing that they're building in Boston, that's really to support the companies and businesses in Boston because the millennials want to be there, they want to live there, they want to work there.
The orange line, you see it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So one of the questions that came about is, since we have a large senior population and residents who are not in the workforce or are phasing out of the workforce, what kind of housing do we need for this changing demographic so that we can attract newcomers to Littleton, but also attract mostly the kids that grew up here, that live here, that can no longer afford to live here. The concern is that millennials they're expected to take over the boomers, as you can see in the next slide, substantially, and they're really our workforce, the future of our workforce, but they're being affected by the lack of affordable housing in Littleton. And it's not just the millennials, but it's the seniors as well. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening around us. I went to that forum in Westford with town managers from Acton, Chelmsford, Tingsboro, and Westford. And a lot of those communities, mostly all of them, are really building a substantial amount of affordable housing. And it's in the form of multi-unit dwellings. You can see just some of the, what's going on in Acton, the number of affordable rental units they've created. They've got a couple of big projects going on. Chelmsford has this huge project going on, the Route 40 interchange, which is a mixed development project, and it reminds me a lot of what we're trying to accomplish at Littleton Station. And I know that they got a lot of funding from the state for that project. So I thought it was interesting to see what's going on in communities around us compared to what's happening here. So part of the master plan, equitable development, ensure Littleton has opportunities for residents of all ages, backgrounds, and incomes that have suitable, good quality housing. We're lacking in that. Provide and maintain diverse mix of housing options so that existing residents are not priced out as the town continues to grow and its housing increases in value. We're not being successful at that at all. Provide young adults with an option to continue to live in Littleton. That's not happening. And have a range of housing for people who want to continue to reside here, work here, and become Littleton residents. So what is happening is a lot of the Affordable Housing Initiative relied on what they call as the senior sell-off. So they were hoping with the change in the bylaws, and this is across the state, with these, density brings affordability and all of that, that the seniors would have an opportunity to downsize and move out of their homes. And meanwhile, with the hope that new families, younger families will come in and have the option for a more affordable housing opportunity in Littleton, but that didn't happen. So as you can see from the next slide, it just talks about making the transition will require that seniors have attractive, affordable alternatives to their current housing, and young professionals have opportunities to move to Littleton as well as affordable housing alternatives. So as you can see from the next slide, we are not building multi-unit housings. We do not have a large multi-unit housing stock at all. The majority of our housing is detached, single-family units. And it's expensive to live in Littleton. As you can see, even our rental prices are, up to $2,500 a month for our housing costs. Never mind owning a home, what it costs to live in Littleton. You can just see with that income that you need to afford to live in Littleton if you want to rent or own a home. It's very, very expensive. So what defines affordable housing? Like I said earlier, the average median income in Littleton is $107,800. And the housing is considered affordable when it accounts for 30% or less of your household's income. So if you go to the next slide, 78% of renters in Littleton earn less than Littleton's average median income, and 34.9% of homeowners earn less than the average median income. So what that means is that the renters are considerably cost burden. And you can see that, especially, I had actually one thing, different statistics. So 50.4% of the renter households in Littleton are not cost burdened. Meanwhile, 15.5% are cost burdened, or 15.8 are severely cost burdened.
And the definition of cost burden for this purpose is, again, making less than what you would to
Right,
live in
exact-
the place you were actually living.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then it's considerably different for the owner households. There's
I'm glad I have a title.
85.9% are not cost burdened, while 12.4% are cost burdened. So in comes the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And that was, it's a municipal, it was under the master plan to establish a municipal affordable housing trust in order to build local capacity for housing advocacy, housing finance, and housing development. And this just goes over what is a trust. We did vote this in special town meeting, October 2017. It was Article 7, to establish a municipal affordable housing trust fund. It's part of the master plan. It will be, the funds will be held in a municipal account and managed by a municipal treasurer, and it's led by a 7-member board that is dictated by the statute. It's myself, Bartlett Harvey, Mark Montanari from the Planning Board, Maureen Donnelly, Dr. Angus Michaels, and Millie McGovern. So,
Do you have a vacancy there, or
no, there's no vacancy, but I would love to see if we could expand it
That's
to
only
some
6, though.
degree. Oh, did I miss somebody?
Town administrator.
And the town administrator, thank you. So there's many funding sources for the trust, potential funding sources. One of them is an article that's being presented, part of an article that's being presented at town meeting, and that's to use some funds from the CPA housing bucket. We can utilize inclusionary zoning payments, negotiated developer fees, which I believe the planning board has actually done that with some recent developments that have come before then. We can use general funds from the town, tax title sales, payments from special bylaws or ordinances, cell tower lease payments, or grants. Grants is something that we're definitely going to look into and try to pursue, because there's a lot of grant money out there for various causes. There is some administrative costs that I listed in the other column, just so it's going to take a little bit of work and resources to actually operate the trust. And then the next slide just goes into our board powers. We can accept and receive real property, personal property, and money by gift, grant, or contribution. We can purchase and retain real property. We can sell, lease, convey personal, mixed, or real property at public auction or by private contract. We can execute deeds, assignments, transfers, employ advisors and agents, borrow money in mortgage or pledge trust assets as collateral, manage and improve real property. So we do have a wide range of powers to help us operate the trust. What we're focusing on right now is the rental voucher program that has been mentioned. Is one of our first initiatives. We have asked for basically the balance of the housing bucket, which is over $500,000. Certainly, not all of that would be utilized for a rental vouching
In a
program.
normal year, how much does it regain?
60,000.
60,000.
Yeah. So we're actually meeting tomorrow night. We have to establish a budget.
Yeah.
But we really want to focus immediately on the low to moderate income families, like you saw in the previous slide, the cost burden households, to give them some relief. There's other communities that are using these voucher programs, Bedford, Westford, and I forget there's one other town. And basically what it is, it's a set sum of money that you provide to the landlord to help bridge that gap between the rent,
Similar to Section 8.
similar. It's really hard to bridge that entire gap, just because rental prices are so high. But even a little bit, we've been told, would assist many, many families in town. The other thing that we're really interested in that we haven't discussed or voted on as a board is homeowner assistance, which is, to me, it's really interesting. So basically, you can vet participants through a lottery system. And so, say you're going to buy a house and it's $300,000, we only get approved for $250,000. The trust can fill that gap and give the $50,000 so that you're making the seller whole. But at the same time, what happens is you put a deed restriction on the property, so that now becomes part of our affordable housing inventory. And it's a great way to maybe help some younger families who just quite aren't there yet to meet the housing costs for Littleton, to be able to buy and afford a house in our community. The other thing, the next slide is just some examples of affordable multi-unit housing developments that have been built. The trust at this time does not have any vision for using town land to create or build housing. Right now, we're focusing, trying to just utilize units that are already in place. But I think the point of this slide is to show people that multi-unit housing can be attractive. It doesn't have to be scary or cold. I thought these were some great examples. A lot of them look like farmhouses. They could certainly mix well with the character of Littleton. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, that we want to talk more with the planning board about, is local preference. Under the, as a means to build affordable housing. So with the number of affordable units that are required or can be required of a developer, we can take a portion of those and earmark them for local preference, and that would be a great way to help current residents, especially our municipal employees. I know we've all heard from the highway department, the police department, the fire department, our school teachers, that they can't afford to live here. So it would be a really great way to help our own in some respects. So this is just,
A lot of statistics in the next couple of slides.
yeah, so immediate,
Can you just touch on that durational residency? What do you mean by that?
well, so basically is, say you don't work here, or, how do I want to word this? You can't say, well, I don't live there anymore, but I did live there for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to meet the requirements, somebody who's here now in town.
Okay.
It can't be a,
Look back.
it can't be like a look-back type thing. So part of the master plan, again, have a range of housing for senior citizens, families, and young people entering the workforce to help keep Littleton thriving, and I think that's really important, especially with our lower population of millennials, and also promote the health and well-being of the community as a whole. So some of the immediate needs in Littleton, there's only a 5% vacancy rental rate in Littleton. A lot of that has to do with, because we don't really have a lot of rental opportunities in Littleton in general. Presently, there's over 30 individuals and families from Littleton who would benefit from the rental voucher program. There's 34 seniors on a waiting list for a subsidized rental housing. As far as affordable housing goes, there's 31 families and 6 adults, non-elderly, of varying ages in need of 2- and 3-bedroom housing. And overall, there's 10,000 families and individuals from Middlesex County waiting on a list for subsidized rental housing. So we're really excited about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I think we can do a lot of great things with the community. There's definitely a need that I don't think we really were fully aware of until we started having this discussion. The next slide is just talks about the homeless population in Massachusetts, which is just very sad. But a lot of residents currently there's people that are in shelters, they're living in family members' basements, in need of housing, and then there's other people who live here. The voucher program can help someone, you have a family, someone gets sick, they're out of work, they're struggling to make rent. And after you're in an apartment, there's not really anywhere else to go to downsize. Next thing you know, you're in a shelter, you're living with a relative or somebody like that. So we're just trying to come up with some solutions in the immediate future to help some residents here in town.
Can I ask you a question? Is this your personal handiwork?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, without being too fawning with my praise, I don't know, I've seen reports that we've paid, or the state through grants have paid consultants $50,000 in 6 months worth of time to come up with something that was less direct and less meaningful than this, and it's very pointed and ought to serve as a guide for our addressing of the housing issues. Have you shared it yet with the planning board and the master
No,
plan
I need to
committee?
do that. Master plan, I need to get it in front of them. I scaled it back a lot because there's so much to it. And I had shown the Economic Development Committee, like the whole economic piece of it, and I kind of took everything and just threw it against a wall. So I ran it by Bartlett again, and we really just kind of tailored it back. But the mission, the goal is to get it out there to everybody, just so we're all on the same page.
I'll tell you, one lesson learned, I mean, I kind of fought some of this battle back in the 80s before I was on the Selectmen. The first time I was on the Housing Authority, and we had an Affordable Housing Committee then. And, out of that, things like Littleton Green, Pondside, Patriot Circle, built an earlier generation did Pine Tree Park. But, it just reminds me that this is a constant struggle. But,
Right.
and it doesn't get any easier. As prices go up, it becomes even worse. But, I mean, we were talking about, it's kind of, with much less daunting statistical hurdles to climb, there being the same kind of challenges, 30, 40 years ago. But, I mean,
Right. Well, I think the difference, Paul, though, was like 30 or 40 years ago, we could find an affordable apartment here in town. Like, we could stay here. One of the slides that I found through Datatown, the Mass Housing Partnership has this awesome tool that they put together. It's called Datatown. So you can put in any municipality in Massachusetts, and it gives you all this information, statistics and whatnot. But one of the things that it was talking about population. So our population ages 15 through 19 is like 7.6%. So that's for the age of 19. Then when you go down to the age group 20 through 24, that drops to 4.2%. And then 25 through 29, it drops to 5.2. And then 30 to 34, it drops to 4.2. It's like people who grew up here, they graduate high school, they don't come back.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You know?
You used to say, if you want to see the people that you graduated, at least back, in my time frame, the mid-'70s and mid-'80s, just drive on 119, because you're going to find them out in Pepperell Towns and Ashburnham. So, it's not even, now those towns are out of reach. If you're leaving here, you're gone.
Right.
Who knows where you are?
Right. But, I mean, it concerns me for two reasons. Littleton has always been a multi-generational
Yeah.
community. We know
that's at risk.
everybody sitting here at this table, that's at risk. But the other thing that concerns me too is that's our workforce. We want economic development and to create restaurants and businesses well, who's going to work there? Who can afford to?
Yeah, so you had mentioned that you came to economic development, and the thing that, the correlation that we made was just that. There is no place for the workforce to live. And the workforce, I'm going to bring up Dover Salary again, they are trying to keep their workforce within 15 miles of, they're all within 15 miles of Littleton right now, so they want to try to keep them in that radius when they find something else. So we don't offer that type of housing, and we need to try to be more proactive to try to find out. Like Red Hat's doing that on 110. The housing that they're putting in is designed for workforce housing.
Right.
You know, I don't even know how much we partnered, and it was before you were on planning board, but with 15 Great Road, did we look at having that conversation with the leasing agents for 15 Great Road?
Right.
When those apartments were being put up to try to retain some of those units. I don't recall those conversations being had.
Right.
The little, you mentioned, you know, earlier, we were talking about the Littleton Station visioning this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all got there at some point or another, but there's a lot of correlation between what you're talking about, the affordable housing, and what's being discussed over there.
Right.
That's kind of ripe for the picking, and, you know, maybe we are able to retain some of those age group, those demographics that you're talking about, and they might be getting on the train and going to work, you know, west of here or east of here.
Right.
But if we have some sort of affordable housing within, you know, within a striking distance of the train.
Right.
It's time to be proactive. I love the work you did. I read it through a couple of times. Unfortunately, I think we as a town, made some mistakes in early 2000s, 1990, in that range there, where we had a housing committee that put something together. They had recommendations, well, looked, and
Right.
they were shelved, because back then, we had this concept, I'm saying as a whole, the town, that we had saw what happened to Acton, and people had this big fear we're going to get apartment houses, so they weren't open to anything that might have been a duplex or a triplex or anything that would be more affordable. We lost an opportunity there now, and I'm glad you're bringing this up, so maybe we can be proactive and not put
Right.
everything in the back shelf so we don't fall behind again.
And I'll
And there
tell you-
are towns that are doing certain things like that.
But
Love to
you
mention
touched
it.
on a part of this, too, that I think there's a ray of hope. A lot of the objection is to, well, if we built the kind of housing to address those needs, it would aesthetically change and wreck the common area. But Anthony was part of a small group of us that had a chance to get a first blush look at, say, what the Jim Mon and the folks at Northern Bank and Trust are thinking of doing at their piece of Gray Road. And I'll tell you, you know, we were all impressed. Myron from the planning board was there, and it wasn't primarily housing, but it was mixed use that included some housing. And it's the sort
Right.
of stuff that I think when people start seeing those design drawings, rather than say the stuff that was generated for the master plan process, which frankly might have covered the ground as far as, you know, showing
Right.
levels, it was like scary, you
Yeah,
know, those
the-
big boxy,
the capacity,
ugly things.
right.
You know, so I'm hoping that through the master plan process, your efforts, the Affordable Housing Trust, you know, maybe we can, and then again, actual property owners showing things that they're willing to invest in that look good and match the town, and, you know,
Right.
then maybe there's a better appetite for this sort of thing.
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
towns are doing it now, just like you said, if it's done properly, you can fit things in
Fits the
with,
character.
Yeah.
with different uses and still keep the town character and still have some affordability to it.
Right, and it's amazing, a lot of the seniors are ready to downsize, they're like, I want a condo, I want to go to an apartment, and it's good because it could fit both demographics, it can fit the millennial demographic, but also the seniors as well. So we have a unique opportunity, we just need to get the right tools in place to create that type of housing.
For me, as a result of, I wasn't at the meeting on Saturday, I was there Friday night, but I wasn't there on Saturday. As a result of that, was there much feedback that you heard from residents relative to this component as far as development over by Taylor Street, Foster Street, the station area? Was that discussed much, or do you have any feedback from folks?
They were, yeah, they were really excited about development in that area, and there was a whole housing board, and you could put stickers on the type of housing that you'd like to see, and it was all multi-unit housing. There was one component which I thought was kind of neat, was the little mini cottages, and it's about the, sort of like the Riverwalk over in Concord that I haven't visited yet. But there was some enthusiasm about that, but definitely, I didn't hear any opposition to multi-unit housing, and it was really, everybody was really excited about what could be on that end of town. There's a lot of potential there.
We certainly learned from our neighbors, and Joe, I think you're exactly right. People didn't want those garden-style boxes getting popped up all over Great Road, but we can also, you know, so we can learn from that perspective, but we can also learn from you know, some victories, some wins that the communities around us have.
Right, right.
So we just need to be, to your point, proactive.
Anna, you want to jump in?
Sure, thank you. So I would like to comment on the slides that Cindy had. Sorry, Anna Houston.
Never mind that, who's the guy next to you?
Oh, God.
So the last couple of slides, it actually had photos of different types of affordable housing units that very much look like they belong here in New England. I think it's very important for us to all remember that affordable housing can come in all sorts of fashions and sizes, and that we don't have to build huge monstrosities in order to get it, but rather if we can tuck in 5 over here, another 3 over here, and do it in a style that makes sense, then that would be the way to go. I say that knowing, though, that ultimately economics have to work. And so one of the factors that we as a town need to take into account is how are we going to be able to pave the way so that developers, individual property owners, can actually build something that makes economic sense,
Right.
as well as makes sense for residents.
Oh, that's your job.
Planning board, talk to the planning board, lady.
I know.
Which, by the way,
Yeah.
we are planning to have a retreat in late May, and that will be certainly one of the topics to be able to discuss. And, we hope to come out of there with some more thoughts on all of this. That's great.
Terrific.
You guys going to Vegas again?
Only if you're coming with us, Joe.
All right. Thank you very much, Cindy.
Oh, you're
Terrific
welcome.
presentation.
Thanks.
Mr. Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Just a little foresight here with regards to the housing board there. I sort of kind of see that as a bank, and I think that whenever we do get this marijuana 3% tax in place, I think that money that comes in on that could go in to this housing board there to help alleviate some of the hardship among citizens here in Littleton.
Thank you. I'm sure Cindy wouldn't object to that.
Nope.
Good, all right.
We've already spent that 3 times.
Right, I know. A lot of people are spending that money, but in their minds.
Let me
Yes,
just
sure.
look at my notes. I did jot down some questions.
Yep, fine.
So one of them is, what can we or other boards do to help the housing trust with the initiative? I mean, we talked about being proactive, and, you know, planning board's talking about, you know, looking at the bylaws and trying to, whether it's overlays or funding.
Right.
What are some of the things?
I mean, definitely we need some zoning changes, so that we can create multi-unit housing where it makes sense to, or an overlay, or something along those lines. And I have mentioned that to the certain members of the planning board. That would certainly be helpful. Sewer came up a lot. You know, we're talking about the common area, but on the train station area, more and more people, and actually, at one point out, the consultant said, well, none of this can happen unless we get sewer in this part of town.
In the earliest days of the first sewer proposals, it was initially pitched as, there are 3 areas of town that need it for hydrologic reasons, and that would be the common area, the depot area, which I think encompasses up the, you know, Taylor Street.
Right.
Talking about in the lake, obviously. So that,
Right.
you know, that's not, you know, that's in keeping. with
Right,
what we
yeah, no, it was
understood.
interesting.
That needs to be on the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. I totally agree, absolutely. And the other thing was, I think Maren has a proposal for a housing reduction plan for seniors, but I really would love to get one done for affordable housing. I think that would be a really beneficial tool to have, so.
Okay, well, I think we've accomplished a lot tonight.
I'm just gonna throw one
Oh,
thing
you
out
did
there,
get more, all right.
kind of off the wall.
Yeah.
It's just, we watch these things on TV with the small houses and all these kinds of things, and And I think, maybe Cindy, you would mention the Riverwalk with little
Yeah.
cottage.
Oh, the little mini, yeah.
I mean, those.
Shared common areas, but individual little
Yeah, I
units,
mean,
yeah,
if we,
small.
if
They're
if
so
there was a
cute.
development that had a piece of land, and we got real creative, and we, you know, brought the services to the site, almost like a mobile home park.
Right.
Where we allowed for those, or maybe a developer builds these small houses, and it's, you know, Millennium Park, whatever. you know,
Right,
it's-
right.
It's, we could be novel in that way, and it could be kind of a cool place for, some young people to develop.
Live, yeah.
Yeah, a little commune, yeah, exactly. The other thing I'll just throw out there is, the other thing I had was, we have pieces of tax title property that we aren't doing anything with.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And, I mean, what if we did something, a ground-up project with the Neshoba Valley Tech, or
Right. Ha-
partnered with a developer, you know, if, okay, you want to get this development done, but we need you to do this for us on this.
Right.
I don't know, I don't know what we're
So-
allowed to do.
So we
Just
can
get-
take smaller, we've looked at some larger parcels, the trusted, Mark Montanari actually had brought in a bunch, he brought in 8, and 7 got discarded. Anthony was there for that, that was fun. It was just one by one, they just, no.
Some was conservation, some it just wasn't.
It wasn't gonna work.
That's what I remember in reviewing those lists of properties in the past, is that a lot of them occur in the same areas that lack little parcels of open space in the lake area, you know, so if you're taking the one spot that we own as
On Elm,
tax title, and then
Yeah.
you're building on the last postage stamp that hasn't been built on yet, that's
Right.
pluses and minuses.
So we were looking at the larger parcels, but the smaller parcels, if the town owns those, we can contact Habitat for Humanity, and they'll come in and build on it. And create affordable units that way. I mean, that's an option that we have. Like Anna mentioned, the infill, the little infill housing
Right next to,
projects.
Right on the corner of Harvard Road and Bruce Street, there across from the farm, there they built one there.
Right, yeah, exactly. So that's an option for us, as well, so it's a lot of
Just
potential.
outside the box, just to think of something.
Right,
I can send you all a link to a project that Habitat for Humanity did, I think it was in North Carolina. In fact, one of our own town young people was down there working on one of the tiny houses that they're building for affordable housing down there, Micah Webster.
oh, okay.
So I can send that to you all so you can see what they're doing down there. And
So the tallest kid to a tiny house.
Carolyn, who was with the
Oh, right, you had mentioned, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
I have more notes, but I'm done.
Where'd you get all this energy tonight, Chuck?
Not midnight yet.
Anna, Chuck.
Pardon?
They start calling you Anna.
Thanks again.
You're welcome.
We look forward to hearing
Thanks
back
for
from you on
listening.
the next stage of progress, hopefully. Anything else, board members? Otherwise,
I mean, if you come along something like, you know, what would really help is if the Board of Selectmen got behind this or helped us with this, just
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Good point.
motion to adjourn.
Heard one.
second.
Okay, motion's been made by Selectman Coast, seconded by Selectman Napoli to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Right.
Thank you, everybody.